Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to Day 1272 special stream. And today we have a very big event happening right now. Zelensky is meeting with the White House officials to discuss a peace deal, and also European leaders have arrived in Washington, D.C., and they're on their way to the White House, and we have that live coverage right now, and it's good to see you all once again.
And, of course, we are waiting at this moment for the arrival of the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, to the White House in Washington, D.C. in the United States of America, as a summit between the Ukrainians and the President of the United States is to be conducted today about the possibility of the end to the war in Ukraine. Based off of the fire and the fury seen in the last meetings between the President of Ukraine and the United States of America, we are expecting that there is a decent likelihood of such an event to happen at this time. We are waiting at this moment to see if the White House will be going live soon, as this will be generally our feed or footage that we will be able to show for the meeting itself, but in the meantime, we are simply waiting for the arrival of the President of Ukraine. The President of Ukraine was expected to arrive at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, but it does appear that the President of Ukraine is 15 minutes late, and we've also been able to hear that multiple European leaders, which appear to have already arrived at the White House, were already about 30 to 40 minutes early, well, more so 30 to 40 minutes late, although they were arriving at the White House around 30 to 40 minutes ago. We are also understanding that there are other significant developments happening around the entirety of the world, and we will be making sure to cover those developments, specifically those of the diplomatic sphere, as they're continuing to unfold in real time in front of us. We have already been able to hear of some developments today inside of Washington, D.C., as we were able to hear that the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, had already made it clear that he will not give up the land of Ukraine to Putin, and that is simply impossible. We have also been able to hear by many in the chat that apparently President Zelensky has already arrived at the White House.
Yes, Zelensky has arrived at the White House. He just showed up, and apparently the White House is not yet streaming the event because there is no live stream on the White House's website, but it does appear that Zelensky has showed up, and it looks like the president has actually apparently put his arms around Zelensky. Zelensky is wearing a suit jacket, by the way. We do have a picture of that. It's been reposted on our Twitter page. There you can see there's the initial moments of them getting out of the vehicle and heading into the White House. So we're waiting on a live stream to actually get this live on the air. And right now it appears to be, hopefully they haven't decided not to stream as we said we needed it for our stream. Hopefully that's not the case, but you never know. But right now we're waiting on that. But it looks like he has arrived as of right this second.
And it does appear that the meeting is apparently most likely already taking place at this moment, as reports have come out that the president of Ukraine and the United States of America have already entered the White House at this moment and are most likely getting involved in talks immediately. It does appear that the reception, really a lot cannot be told from the picture alone, so we'll be having to wait for additional information and news coming out at the moment about that meeting, but it appears that unfortunately the White House is not live streaming the event currently, which we were hoping and generally expecting that they would most likely broadcast that at some point, but it does not appear that they're doing that yet, and we don't really know if they're going to be doing that at all. But nevertheless, we were able to hear that the president of Ukraine, in the meantime, did have a meeting earlier this morning with Keith Kellogg, who is the U.S. Special Representative for Ukraine, ahead of the talks with the president of the United States and European leaders. Media reports also suggest that the president will hold a meeting with European leaders immediately before speaking with the president of the United States. Generally, understand that all of these meetings have been conducted at this moment, and it's simply only a matter of time until we see that the president of Ukraine and the president of the United States conclude their meeting and then meet with the European leaders for Zelensky's second time in the day to be able to discuss the developments that were had between the meeting of the two presidents. At the moment, we also been able to hear some additional information that apparently the White House asked in advance if Zelensky was going to be wearing a suit or not, and the response was that he was expected to wear the same jacket that he wore at the NATO summit in the Netherlands, which you can see right there. So it does appear that President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine is quite clearly not wearing a suit, at least by traditional senses, but it also appears that the meeting at the White House is happening at this moment, and we're trying to get as much details and information about it as we possibly can, considering that there is not a live stream currently being run by the White House. We will be making sure...
So right now it appears to be that the European leaders have entered the White House. Also, like we did mention, the president has greeted Zelensky at the door where he usually enters the White House when these meetings take place. So we're expecting to see here, there will be an initial moment which will not be live streamed by the White House, and at that moment is taking place apparently right this second. The moment that is open to the press, that should be streamed on the White House's website, and if they don't stream, that'll be highly unusual because they usually stream everything. So unless they're doing that on purpose, I don't know why they would not stream it today, but they will be having an open press meeting, a bilateral meeting between Volodymyr Zelensky and also the U.S. president. So we're waiting on that. That is the moment we're waiting for, and I suspect that's when the White House stream probably will go live if they'll have one.
And it does not appear that they're still alive at the moment. Someone in the chat actually said that they were live right now. Unfortunately, that's mistaken. It does not appear that they're live at the moment. But it does appear that there is some kind of a feed that people are speaking of. But this is the live news tab of the official White House website, and it does not appear that they're showing a live stream, at least at this moment. So generally, it does appear that we're still waiting for a live stream right now. But in the meantime, we can cover some of the major developments that have happened around the world today in the midst of the upcoming peace talks and the meeting of the European leaders with the President of the United States and the President of Ukraine, as we have been able to hear around the area of Bratislava in Slovakia, that Slovakians have halted, or generally have been forced to halt, their imports through the Druzhba pipeline. Apparently, Ukraine's general staff reported a strike on the Nikolskoye pumping station inside of Bryansk, which we actually covered several days ago, which apparently has completely stopped the transit of any types of fuel resources through the pipeline. We've also been able to hear similar reports from Hungary in the meantime that such an incident has occurred, where there is no importation of any kind of oil or natural gas through the Druzhba pipeline, which appears to be completely suspended in its operations at the moment. We have also been able to hear inside of Ukraine, near to the area of Odessa, that there appears to have been an oil storage site that once again was generally run by an Azerbaijani company, the Sokar company, which was damaged in the result of the attack last night quite significantly. We have been able to hear that there was an ultimatum given by the Azerbaijanis that if any further Azerbaijani energy infrastructure or companies' targets were hit inside of Ukraine, they were going to start conducting actions in support of the state of Ukraine against the Russian Federation, primarily supplying them with arms and equipment.
Also, by the way, folks, I want to apologize up front. YouTube is having apparently a service-wide outage right now. Apparently, it's across the entire YouTube live streaming services is happening right now. And apparently, according to a report I'm seeing from 5 Network, it looks like the disruptions are affecting streams across the platform, including ours as well, because our stream is crashing over and over for pretty much everybody trying to watch. And also, apparently, people are not even seeing our stream in some places because of that outage. So, unfortunately, this seems to be a stream plagued by issues today. It's not going so well for us right now. So we'll see if that clears up or not. But unfortunately, it looks like we are being hampered by that.
Oh, we
look, we have a live stream right now.
And we're going to be running that at the moment.
See it ended.
And as you met with Putin on Friday, today you've got President Zelensky here. As you listen to Russia and Ukraine, which side has the better cards?
Well, I don't want to say that. I'm just here to be. Look, this isn't my war. This is Joe Biden's war. He's the one that had a lot to do with this happening, and we want to get it ended. And we want it to end good for everybody. We want it to end good. The people of Ukraine have suffered incredibly.
President Zelensky, are you prepared to keep sending Ukrainian troops to their deaths for another couple years, or are you going to agree to redraw the maps?
Thank you for your question. So, first of all, we live under each day attacks. That today have been a lot of attacks and a lot of wounded people, and the child was dead, small one year and a half. So we need to stop this war, to stop Russia, and we need support, American and European partners, and we will do our best for this. So, and I think we show that we are strong people, and we supported the idea of the United States, of personally of President Trump, to stop this war, to make a diplomatic way of finishing this war, and we are ready for trilateral, as President said. This is a good signal about trilateral. I think this is very good. Thank you.
Mr. President,
if the peace deal will be achieved, are you going to be willing to send American peacekeepers to Ukraine?
Well, we're going to work with Ukraine. We're going to work with everybody, and we're going to make sure that if there's peace, the peace is going to stay long term. This is very long term. We're not talking about a 2-year peace and then we end up in this mess again. We're going to make sure that everything's good. We'll work with Russia. We're going to work with Ukraine, and we're going to make sure it works. And I think if we can get to peace, it's going to work. I have no doubt about it.
Your team has talked about security guarantees. Could that involve U.S. troops? Would you rule that out in the future?
We'll let you know that maybe later today. We're meeting with 7 great leaders of great countries also, and we'll be talking about that. They'll all be involved, but there'll be a lot of help when it comes to security. There's going to be a lot of help. It's going to be good. They are first line of defense because they're there. They're Europe, but we're going to help them out also. We'll be involved. Yes.
Vladimir Putin mentioned that the war will not end without addressing the root causes of this war. Have you had an understanding what are the root causes of this war?
Well, look, the war is going to end. When it ends, I can't tell you, but the war is going to end, and this gentleman wants it to end, and Vladimir Putin wants it to end. I think the whole world is tired of it, and we're going to get it ended. It was, I've done 6 wars. I've ended 6 wars, and I thought this maybe would be the easiest one, and it's not the easiest one. It's a tough one. A lot of reasons for it. And they'll be talking about it for a long time, but they'll be talking about the others. Look, India, Pakistan, we're talking about the big places. When you look at, you just take a look at some of these wars. You go to Africa and take a look at that. Rwanda and the Congo, Republic of the Congo. That's been going on for 31 years. And so we've done a total of 6, and we really have 6, not including the fact that we obliterated, and it turned out to be a total obliteration, the nuclear, as you said, the future nuclear capability of Iran. And this one, I think we're going to get solved also. I feel confident we're going to get it solved.
Like guarantees or like special envoy put forward.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can you tell us about your conversations with European leaders and what they need to see to support an end to the war?
Yeah, well, we're going to be meeting with a great representative group and 7 very powerful, very big countries and great people, all friends of mine and friends of yours. And we're going to have some suggestions made. They want to see peace. They would like to see peace. Go ahead, please. In the red.
President Trump, do you think it's fair to, for Ukraine and for Russia to achieve a lasting and durable peace if Ukraine cedes its territories that Russia hasn't yet conquered? Do you think it's a fair peace for Ukraine?
We're going to have a lasting peace. Just to answer the first part of your question, we're going to have a lasting peace. I hope it's going to be immediately. I hope it doesn't have to go on. And I think people of the whole world is going to be very happy when that's announced. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, you posted on social media, Mr. President, a very touching letter from the First Lady. And the letter was hand-delivered to President Putin. And it calls for an end to the war, essentially, because of the children and the children's future. Why did the First Lady feel that letter was necessary? Was it because she believes that Mr. Putin is the aggressor in the war? Is a similar letter being hand-delivered to President Zelensky?
So the First Lady felt very strongly. She's watched the same thing that you watch and that I watch. I see things that you don't get to see, and it's horrible. But when she's got a great love of children, she has a wonderful son that she loves, probably more than anybody, including me. I hate to say it, but she loves her son. She loves children, and she hates to see something like this happening. And that goes for other wars too. I mean, she sees the heartbreak, the parents, the funerals that you see on television. Always funerals. We want to see something other than funerals. No, she felt. It was a beautiful letter. It was very well received by him. And she did ask me to say, she would love to see this end. She would love to see it end. And she says it very openly, very proudly, and with great sorrow because so many people have been killed.
Last week,
Brian, go ahead, Brian.
Yes, sir. I've got a question for each of you. Yes. First of all, Mr. President Zelensky, you look fabulous in that suit.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, you look good.
I said the same thing.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice? That's the one that attacked you last time. See, now he's.
I remember that.
I love that. You look wonderful. No, my first question for you, President
But you
Zelensky.
are in the same suit. You see, I changed, you are not.
Maybe yours is much better. Real quickly, upon peace, God willing we get peace, are you open to holding an election in your country?
Yes, of course. We are open for election, yes. We have to do safety circumstances. And a little bit, we need to work in the parliament, because during the war you can't have elections, but we can do security. We need, maybe, how to say, we need a truth, yes, everywhere, in the battlefield, in the sky, in the sea, yeah, to make possible for people to do democratic, open, legal elections.
So you say during the war you can't have elections. So let me just say 3.5 years from now. So you mean if we happen to be in a war with somebody, no more elections? Oh, that's good. I wonder what the fake.
You like this idea?
No. Speaking of news, I got a question for you. This sounds insane for me even to ask this, but do you think the American media really doesn't even want a peace deal because they've been so critical of you every step of the way as you lead the charge for peace?
It's an amazing phenomenon. I said that if in the settlement you got Moscow, St. Petersburg, and thousands of miles around them, they would say, I made a bad deal. The level of hatred and animosity is incredible. Not with all. I mean, we have great people up here. We also have terrible people up there that I think are told what to say. But, in solving all of these wars, they don't even write about it. I saw major wars. I saw wars that have been going on for 31, 35, and 37, and a couple of quicker ones. One that was going to go into a full-blown deal very quickly. What the one I'm talking about, it was a big one. But they don't even write about that. No matter what I do, no matter what, and this is not anything to do with you. It's probably to your advantage in a certain way. But no matter what I do, no matter what deal I make, from my standpoint, you'll come out good. Maybe President Putin will come out good. But they'll say, Trump was absolutely horrible. It's just that, and I've lived with that for a long time. I've lived with it since just before the first election. I used to get great publicity. Now I get the worst publicity anyone's ever gotten in office, but I won in a landslide, so that people understand. They're the only ones that count, ultimately. But I've also had great reporters. I've had journalists that are very good. But it's very sad when you do the right thing. As an example, they said, because of the fact that Vladimir Putin came to American soil, this was a tremendous defeat for Donald Trump. No, it was really wonderful that he did it. It was a hard thing for him to do, to be honest with you. It was the opposite of what they said, but they said it. Now, if he didn't come, they'd say that was also bad for Trump. You know, there's no way. And there's just a great dishonesty of the press, and I think that's why it's lost its credibility. You know, its credibility is at an all-time low. We have a thing going on right now in D.C. We went from the most unsafe place anywhere to a place that now friends are calling me up, Democrats are calling me up, and they're saying, sir, I want to thank you. My wife and I went out to dinner last night for the first time in 4 years, and Washington, D.C. is safe, and you did that in 4 days. I'll tell you, it's safe. I had another friend of mine, he has a son who's a great golfer, he's on tour, and he came in 4th yesterday in the big tournament where Scotty Scheffler made the great shot, and he said his son is going to dinner in Washington, D.C. tonight. I said, would you have allowed that to happen a year ago? He said, no way, no way. He said, what you've done is incredible. And I think the people realize it. But the press says, he's a dictator, he's trying to take over. No, all I want is security for our people. But people that haven't gone out to dinner in Washington, D.C. in 2 years are going out to dinner. And the restaurants the last 2 days were busier than they've been in a long time. Thank you for that.
I walked around yesterday with MTG. If you can walk around with DC with MTG and not be attacked, the city is safe.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Last week you warned of what you called severe consequences if a 30-day ceasefire or any type of ceasefire were not agreed to by Russia. Will there be severe consequences? Does that change because of
I don't think you need a ceasefire. You know, if you look at the 6 deals that I settled this year, they were all at war. I didn't do any ceasefires. And I know that it might be good to have, but I can also understand strategically why, well, you know, one country or the other wouldn't want it. You have a ceasefire and they rebuild and rebuild and rebuild, and, you know, maybe they don't want that. But if you look at the 6 deals that we made peace and you know, long-term, long-running wars, I didn't do any ceasefires. Would I like the concept. You know, I like the concept of a ceasefire for one reason, because you'd stop killing people immediately, as opposed to in 2 weeks or 1 week or whatever it takes. But we can work a deal where we're working on a peace deal while they're fighting. They have to fight. I wish they could stop. I'd like them to stop. But strategically, that could be a disadvantage for one side or the other. But all of these deals I made without even the mention of the words ceasefire.
Can you explain the decision to offer Ukraine Article 5-like security guarantees, but stop short of pushing for their full membership?
Yeah, well, we haven't done anything on that yet. If you look back and you go back long before President Putin, it was always a statement that they would never allow Ukraine into NATO. So that was a statement that was made, but we haven't discussed any of that yet. We're going to be discussing it today, but we will give them very good protection, very good security. That's part of it. And the people that are waiting for us, they are, I think they're very like-minded. They want to help out also.
Thank you, President Trump. The United States has already given hundreds of billions of dollars to this war effort in Ukraine.
Biden.
At best, it is a stalemate, and the killing continues. So, President Trump, how much more is the United States willing to give Ukraine? And President Zelensky, how much more do you want?
Well, I'll start off just by saying we're not giving anything now. We're selling weapons. This is something before, I guess the number is well over $300 billion. That was under Joe Biden, a corrupt politician. not a smart man, never was. By the way, go back 40 years, he was not a smart man 40 years ago either, but now he's in particular bad. This was done by a corrupt administration that shouldn't have been in, and frankly, if the right results of the election were given, if I were president, this war would have never taken place, and he would have been very happy because he would have liked to have seen. I mean, they went through hell. He went through hell. This war would have never happened, and the people that were killed, a couple of million people, a lot of people with soldiers and everything else, and the people that have been displaced and forced into other areas and other countries because of what's happened, none of that would have happened. And I'm just saying that he was a horrible president, whether it was the borders or this. He was just a horrible, corrupt president.
Mr. President,
Do you want to answer?
I can. Thank you so much. So first of all, we have possibility now to buy weapon from the United States. We are thankful for this program and this opportunity. We are thankful for Europe. They pay for this. And through NATO program, for example, Pearl and etc., we have some programs where we can have some money to finance this. And this is a part, I think, it's not a part for the war and to defend us. It also will be a part for security guarantees, to strengthen our army, to rearm Ukrainian army. This is very, very important. And it depends how much money we need to rearm. For example, the question of air defense, we spoke about it with President Trump, and I'm happy that we have now bilateral decisions and we work on it with production, American production. Nobody in Europe has so many air defense like Patriots, for example. We need it very much, and this is also about defending.
And I think, I think the good news, we make the best military equipment in the world by far. You mentioned the Patriots. How good are they?
Systems.
We have systems, they're literally 100% foolproof. And it's really like shooting two bullets, two bullets hitting each other in the air in a space like this. The chance is 100%. It's 99 to 100%. So we sell the equipment to NATO. And NATO does what, I don't know what the arrangement is that you have with, but I know that they want you to have the equipment. And we're getting the best equipment in the world, but they pay us for the equipment. Under Biden, it was just crazy what was going on. I believe the number is over 300. I think it could be $350 billion worth of equipment and money and everything else. And we've made more progress in settling this war in the last 2 months than they made in 4 years. This should have been settled a long time ago, but it should have never happened. Yeah, please.
You pushed out on social media.
Brian, go first.
You pushed out on social media about doing away with mail-in ballots and potentially electronic voting machines. Can you explain on that? How
Well, I will. That's a very off-topic, just really quickly. Mail-in ballots are corrupt. Mail-in ballots, you can never have a real democracy with mail-in ballots. And we, as a Republican Party, are going to do everything possible that we get rid of mail-in ballots. We're going to start with an executive order that's being written right now by the best lawyers in the country to end mail-in ballots because they're corrupt. And you know that we're the only country in the world, I believe, I may be wrong, but just about the only country in the world that uses them because of what's happened. Massive fraud all over the place. The other thing we want change are the machines. For all of the money they spend, it's approximately 10 times more expensive than paper ballots. And paper ballots are very sophisticated with the watermark paper and everything else. We would get secure elections. We'd get much faster results. The machines, I mean, they say we're going to have the results in 2 weeks. With paper ballots, you have the results that night. Most people, but most people, many countries use paper ballots. It's the most secure form. So between paper ballots, very, very important, paper ballots, and I think maybe even more important, the mail-in voting. We're going to end mail-in voting. It's a fraud. If you have mail-in vote, even Jimmy Carter with this commission, they set it up. He said the one thing about mail-in voting, you will never have an honest election if you have mail-in. And it's time that the Republicans get tough and stop it because the Democrats want it. It's the only way they can get elected. Because with men and women's sports and with transgender for everybody and open borders and all of the horrible things, and now the new thing is they love crime. They're fighting me on the fact that I've made Washington, D.C. safe. We're not going to get mugged, beaten up, or killed like all the people you've been watching get so badly hurt. I'm glad, I hate to take your time in this, but I'm glad you asked me that question. We're going to stop mail-in ballots because it's corrupt. You know, when you go to a voting booth and you do it the right way and you go to a state that runs it properly, you go in, they even ask me, they asked me for my license plate, for identity. I said, I don't know if I have it. He said, sir, you have to have it. I was very impressed, actually. But it's very hard to cheat with mail-in voting. As you know what happens in California, it's so corrupt, where some people get 5, 6, 7 ballots delivered to them. Now, we got to stop mail-in voting, and the Republicans have to lead the charge. The Democrats want it because they have horrible policy. If you have mail-in voting, you're not going to have many Democrats get elected. That's bigger than anything having to do with redistricting, believe me. And the Republicans have to get smart. We're not going to have a country. I said for a long time at rallies, you need borders and you need free and fair elections. Those two things, otherwise you don't have. We have strong borders now. In 90 days, Mr. President, we didn't have 0, 0, and 3 months. Not one person came in illegally into our country. In fact, even I find that hard to believe, but it's run by a little bit of a liberal group that put out the numbers, so I guess it's, but 0, 0, and 0. You go back a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 millions of people poured into our country. It was terrible. Thank you very much.
What guarantees do you need from President Trump to be able to make a deal? Is it American troops, intelligence, equipment? What is it?
Everything. Really, it includes 2 parts. First, strong Ukrainian army. That's what I began to discuss with your colleagues. And it's a lot about weapon and then people and training missions and intelligence. And second, we will discuss with our partners. It depends on the big countries, on the United States, on a lot of our friends.
Mr. President, are you going to commit American troops to that NATO-like protection in order to get President Zelensky to a deal today?
Well, I don't know if you define it that way, but NATO-like, I mean, we're going to give, we have people waiting in another room right now. They're all here from Europe, biggest people in Europe, and they want to give protection. They feel very strongly about it, and we'll help them out with that. I think it's very important. I think it's very important to get the deal done.
You've been involved to the peacekeeping in Ukraine since your first day in the administration. What would you say to the Ukrainian people right now who are suffering under the Russian attacks and hoping that the American people will stand with them?
Well, I know Ukrainian people. I've known many over the years. They're great people. They're smart. They're energetic. They love their country. I mean, they love their country, and we want to get this war ended. That's all I can do. I love the Ukrainian people, but I love all people. I love the Russian people. I love them all. I want to get the war stopped. Very important.
Was there any aspect of your discussion with Vladimir Putin that left you disappointed?
Look, we just spoke to, I was just telling the president, I just spoke to President Putin indirectly, and we're going to have a phone call right after these meetings today. And we may or may not have a trilat. If we don't have a trilat, then the fighting continues. And if we do, we have a good chance. I think if we have a trilat, there's a good chance of maybe ending it. But he's expecting my call when we're finished with this meeting. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
And that appears to be the conclusion of the press conference between the President of the United States and the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. And while a lot was talked about, it doesn't appear that a great deal was talked about, at least in specific context, about the actual war in Ukraine or the possibility of ending the conflict, at least at the moment. We do understand that after this press conference, they will be talking for some time inside of a private room that will not be accessible by the press, but nevertheless, at least at the moment, we generally do not understand the U.S. negotiating position, nor do we really understand the Ukrainian negotiating position, at least at the moment, because none of that was really addressed, at least at this point in the press conference so far. But Matthew, what do you make of it?
So, also, is my volume good again, by the way? Am I blowing, like, speakers out, or am I good?
Oh, no, it was already lowered before we got off the little broadcast there, so we're good.
Okay, well, I would say generally speaking, that seems to be a lot of a more cordial meeting than I was expecting. That was extremely cordial compared to last time, and also the vice president didn't really speak at all during the entire time. So it looks to me like the tone has shifted quite a bit. I was expecting maybe a political ambush on Zelensky, but what we saw today was actually extremely friendly compared to how it was last time. Also, notice that he called Zelensky Mr. President, which is completely very formal compared to last time. So I would say generally that went pretty decently well. And also notice that he wasn't really pressuring Zelensky at all. That was shocking too. He told Zelensky that maybe they might have a trilateral meeting between Putin, Zelensky, and the U.S. president, or maybe not. And also he alluded to keep supporting Ukraine with weapons as well. So that actually was way better. We're leagues better than I thought it was going to be. Much, much better. So that's a bit of a relief. But now they're going to actually go into the closed meeting with the European leaders and also Zelensky as well. So maybe things might change there, but maybe not. But it sounds like a peace deal is really, really far off. It sounds like it's not anywhere close to reality, which that's completely opposite of the reports we had heard previously.
And of course, we are going to be waiting to see what ends up happening inside of the negotiating room, which the press does not have access to. We do understand that the president of the United States and the president of Ukraine will be meeting with the European Union leaders at a later date at some point. Sorry, everyone, for stuttering a lot. There's very strained at the moment, but nevertheless, it does appear that that'll be happening at some point in the future. In the meantime, however, we do have a little bit of additional information to talk about with the leaders who currently are present at the White House. We are able to understand that there are a significant amount of them who are involved, including those of Merz of Germany, Starmer of the United Kingdom, Macron of France, Meloni of Italy, Ursula von der Leyen, the EU Commissioner, the President of Finland, as well as the NATO General Secretary. So there is a quite important and powerful group of people from the European Union and generally the European portion of NATO who are currently present at this moment inside of the White House, and we generally do understand there will be a great deal of decision-making power, especially that Merz, Starmer, and Macron will have, as those three countries hold a significant part of the European Union's economic abilities, military capabilities, and most importantly, the general diplomatic sway to be able to dictate the course of the war. That also may be the reason why the president's position on the conflict has changed greatly, as we have seen that the Europeans have largely completely bucked or completely scoffed at prior demands or statements made by the president of the United States about the future of the conflict, at least in this current situation. But it does appear at the moment that there is going to be a very interesting sort of a meeting being held, because once again, just to make this a little bit clear, we do not know exactly what the United States is even going to propose to the Ukrainians as a possible peace deal at the moment. That's a little bit unclear, but we are going to be waiting to see any additional information, but that meeting is now underway and currently being held at this moment. But we actually do have some additional news coming out at this moment. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so we did try to listen all the way through that as much as we could. And also, again, apologies for the YouTube issues. YouTube just happened to have a major outage at the exact same time we started our live stream, so that's a bit of a problem. And also, by the way, Enforcer, I'm not sure if that footage there is copyrighted or not, so I might want to put a pause on that. But not really sure why YouTube's having an issue. And also, apologies for the audio issue as well. For some reason, the White House's audio is extremely low on their page. Don't know why that is either, but sadly, we can't control either one, so apologies for the quality issues there. But also, one thing I do want to point out from that meeting between Zelensky and the U.S. president, notice that the president was asked about potentially sending U.S. troops into Ukraine. He didn't rule that out. That was something that a lot of people just missed just now. The U.S. president did not rule out sending U.S. forces to Ukraine, which is remarkable. That's something there I was not expecting to hear today. He did not say that that was going to be off the table completely, and he left that on the table. So that's quite wild right there. It sounds like the U.S. president is considering using that as leverage potentially in the future to maybe send U.S. forces into Ukraine at some point if it gets really out of control. So definitely not expecting that, by the way. Also, by the way, outside of all the politics, for some reason the reporters were bringing up really pitiful questions during this. They had Zelensky, the leader of a foreign country, literally sitting right there, and they were asking political questions. So really, honestly, disgrace on the mainstream media. That's why they're losing viewers left and right. But also, they asked him about the suit. Zelensky did wear the suit today, which obviously apparently pleased the president quite a bit, because he seemed to be very happy about that. And also, he wore sort of like a black jacket or something. A nice suit, actually, sort of beside the point. But also another thing as well, as the president is doubling down on not having a ceasefire, and also he wants to work on a peace deal instead. So like we said before, it's going to be hard to get a peace deal if you can't even get a ceasefire. So I would generally say overall, it sounds like Zelensky's very, very optimistic that the U.S. support will continue, and also he's optimistic that the U.S. is going to stand behind him, which is not what I was expecting today whatsoever. So, to me, it sounds like Zelensky's in good shape. It sounds like Putin might be in bad shape based on what we're hearing right now. But Enforcer, what do you think?
It does appear the Russian Federation is most likely in a difficult position at the moment because we do understand that militarily and economically they're doing quite poorly. And most importantly, it does appear that the Russian Federation and the United States of America were not able to find themselves an amenable or agreeable position in Anchorage to be able to even get to peace negotiations on. Given that in mind, the President of the United States will most likely issue the Russian demands on the behalf of the Russian Federation to the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. But Volodymyr Zelensky is, of course, going to shoot down these demands because these demands are absolutely outrageous, including some of the details of the demands. We have been able to hear that apparently the state of Ukraine has to change their national language to Russian, and they also have to completely change the constitution to pretty much configure Ukraine into becoming a puppet state of the Russian Federation. With that in mind, that generally is a no deal as a matter of fact alone on those two topics individually, as changing the national language from Ukrainian to Russian would be generally considered cultural genocide by the state of Ukraine, and most importantly, changing the constitution in the state of Ukraine to exactly what the Russians would want would guarantee that Ukraine either could be annexed quite easily in the future or it will become a Russian satellite state. Both things will be unacceptable from the Ukrainian-speaking position and also unacceptable from a European-speaking position, as it generally will lay out the exact kind of framework that historically existed post-Munich Conference, where we saw the similar thing was conducted and created by the Nazi Germans in the lead up to World War II in 1938. So generally, I would have to say that it does not appear that, at least at the moment, there is going to be any sort of a real progress made. It appears that this is more so going through the motions, possibly at the moment, to make sure that the president shows that he's just doing the motions, but it doesn't really appear that anything significant is going to be coming out of this at all, to be entirely honest with y'all. But that still is yet to be seen. We could hear that everything went poorly inside the negotiating room in a moment, or everything went wildly well, and the Ukrainians will be getting unlimited military support in the form of soup and salad from the United States of America. It's a little bit unclear at the moment. But we are
By the way, another point as well. I'm getting some more details here on exactly what he said, and also re-listening to some parts of that meeting that we just got. Apparently, the U.S. president is saying that American troops might be deployed to Ukraine if a peace deal can be guaranteed and also agreed to by Putin. Then America, along with the European allies, might deploy troops into Ukraine to enforce a peace deal. Now, I can tell you right now, that is definitely not something that Putin's going to agree to. If he agrees to that, that'll be an entire 180 compared to Putin's previous positions on that issue, because the whole point that Putin claims he started the war was because NATO was encroaching on Russian territory. So why would Putin agree for American troops, the enemy of Russia, to be right there on the border with Russian territory? That would make no sense whatsoever. So I suspect that's going to be a huge breakup point with the U.S. and Russia over that issue. And also, Putin's expecting the U.S. president to call him, apparently, after this meeting is over. So I don't really know what Putin's going to say. I have a feeling, though, based on how this has gone, this might fall apart quicker than I was expecting. A trilateral meeting after all of this, if it keeps going this way and with this type of tone toward Ukraine, a trilateral meeting might be almost out of the picture, at least in my assessment. But Enforcer, what do you think?
I would say that a trilateral meeting is certainly out of the question at the moment, because if the Ukrainians do not accept Russian demands, there's really no reason for a trilateral meeting of any type, because they're not even going to be securing a ceasefire or a peace treaty. They're once again back at square one and have to build their way up from there. So generally, highly likely the case that there will not be a trilateral meeting here in the near future. Also, speaking of which, we have actually been able to hear that apparently the Flamingo cruise missile, which is being developed by Ukraine currently with the concept of the war continuing, has actually been filmed and shown to be tested, which we do once again have to remember that this test and this video was published on the very same day that the state of Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, was present and inside of the White House in the United States of America. This is generally supposed to be showing the Ukrainian armed forces' abilities, even without a large amount of massive U.S. support being provided by a U.S. Congressional Drawdown Authority, is still going to be possible, and a great deal of firepower can still be leveraged by the Ukrainian armed forces against the Russian Federation, which we can see in this clip right here of the test launch of the Flamingo cruise missiles. Generally, the Flamingo cruise missile is actually an indigenously designed cruise missile and can operate over a range of nearly 3,000 kilometers, carrying a 1,000 kilogram payload. All of this in mind, this is another reason why the Ukrainians really don't need to end the war, because their domestic war production has actually progressed or evolved to such a degree that the larger manufacturing of cruise missiles like the Flamingo are now possible, meaning that Ukraine does not have to rely as heavily on Western support to be able to get the longer range weaponry necessary to be able to strike and destroy targets deep inside of the Russian Federation.
Also, isn't that timing a little bit unique? That missile right here, which has a very long range and a very large payload capacity on it, which is very potent, that Ukraine is literally showing the test of just today on the White House meeting. This is very interesting timing. To me, I think that might actually be deliberate and kind of sending a message that if Ukraine does not get supported by the West, or somehow the U.S. starts backing out of supporting Ukraine, that they're able to hold their own ground because they're developing their own domestic missile systems where they really don't have to rely on the Western support to actually make that happen. So that seems to be very strategic to me, and it seems to be sending a message to Putin to let him know that basically Ukraine can hold their own ground.
I would have to agree. It does appear that the Ukrainians are making it incredibly clear with the weapons tests conducted today that they can certainly hold their ground well into the future. We also were able to hear in the meantime that Ukrainian armed forces are apparently redeploying into the area of the Kursk Oblast of the Russian Federation. Apparently, according to the Russian military bloggers, they are expecting that another Ukrainian offensive may open up within the Kursk Oblast. All of this, once again, coming out just in the early hours of this morning. We have also been able to hear near Melitopol that a Ukrainian drone was confirmed to be able to fly over the city's airfield, filming the aircraft present at the Melitopol airfield. These are inactive and have not been used for years, but still showing that these drones have the range to be able to reach out to Melitopol and effectively penetrate the Russian air defense perimeter around that area and possibly strike and destroy Russian armed forces that are also present in that general vicinity of the city of Melitopol, which is perfectly placed strategically in the dead center in pretty much every direction of the land bridge that the Russian Federation has been able to create inside of Zaporizhia and Donetsk. We also have had some additional major news today from the Republic of India that apparently the Republic of India is now being claimed to be a middleman for Russian petroleum trying to circumvent sanctions and make it out into the open world. Apparently, the Financial Times is claiming that the Indian oil industry has become a global laundromat for Russian crude. Cheap oil is refined, resold worldwide, and apparently the Russians are able to make a great deal of money or finance off of this sort of an operation to be able to fund the conflict. Apparently, the United States of America is once again putting down the pressure on the Republic of India that they must choose business with Moscow or a real partnership with the West, at least at the moment. That also coming out just earlier this morning before the meeting between the president of Ukraine and the president of the U.S. We also have been able to hear at the exact same time that the People's Republic of China is also saying that they are prepared for a great effort towards peaceful reunification with the Republic of China, which is the island of Taiwan. So it does appear that there was a decent amount of geopolitical developments outside of the situation in Washington today that also occurred as well, which are leading us to believe that things are looking still a little bit precarious. And I also want to make it clear that the People's Republic of China's attempt at a peaceful reunification is more so giving the Taiwanese the opportunity to join them or die. That's generally the ultimatum that the Chinese have been giving for about 70 years at this point, and that is the nice way of them saying that very same ultimatum. So nothing incredibly new there. They're pretty much telling the Taiwanese, you can either join us really peacefully and have a one state, two systems sort of a government, or we can end up invading the island and killing most everyone on the island of Taiwan, which is the alternative. So that's generally what they're saying with that very diplomatically worded, kind-sounding message. But nevertheless, the meeting between the President of the United States and Zelensky is still going on at this moment, and we have not been able to get any further details or updates, at least at this time, about that given situation. So dropping into a couple of other pieces of news, we have been able to hear that all U.S. aircraft at Diego Garcia have left the airbase as of the moment, according to satellite pictures, and it does appear that most of those aircraft have returned back to the United States or their original basings elsewhere, not in Diego Garcia. We have also been able to hear that Hamas is apparently accepting an Israeli ceasefire deal, which largely was classified as an unconditional surrender, and they're supposedly accepting the deal as of right now, but we do not know how much farther this is going to be going, at least at the moment. But one thing is quite clear, at least for now, that the situation inside the Gaza Strip is still quite strenuous at best. But we also have some additional news coming out at the moment. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right. So, also, one other thing that many people are starting to point out is about the comments made by the U.S. president about Zelensky holding elections in his country, which seems to be something that he quickly brushed on, but sort of moved off of very quickly. It sounded like the president was kind of poking fun at the fact that Ukrainian's constitution does not allow elections during wartime. But also, at the same time, he stopped short of telling Zelensky that he has to hold elections in order to get U.S. support. So, not really sure what that was about. There really was no point to it, actually. But Zelensky basically repeated the fact that he really can't hold an election, really didn't go into too many details because I think a reporter asked a question and quickly got them off that topic, which was honestly probably the best thing. And of course, the mainstream media had to take them back off topic with a political question, but I guess at the end of the day, it is what it is. But the election situation, Zelensky appeared not to budge on that one. He was going to basically keep it the way it is because they would have to obviously change their constitution if they wanted to hold an election during a wartime scenario, because right now the law doesn't allow it inside of Ukraine. So I found that a little bit interesting as well. But also, Enforcer, if you go and look at the picture there on our Twitter page, it's the second post down. Look at the difference between the picture, the second one down, right there. You should look at the difference right there. I mean, Zelensky smiling, the U.S. president smiling. This is honestly like such a contrast to the last time they were in there. Last time there was basically like they were about to start fighting almost. It was that bad, like actually fighting each other. This time they're actually kind of jovial, which is a bit different.
Yeah, it's a real change, especially from the last time when it was a shouting match between the three, the vice president, the president, and the president of Ukraine, and he was also expelled from the White House. So this certainly is a significant change, at least at the moment, and it does appear that U.S.-Ukrainian relations practically took a 180 over the course of the past few months since that first ill-fated meeting occurred that many months ago, which seems like it was not too long ago, actually, as a matter of fact, only a couple of weeks ago, but strangely enough, just a couple of months. But still, with that, it does appear that we are waiting for additional information at the moment, and considering that we are generally sitting around twiddling our thumbs waiting for additional news to come out right now, we will be making sure to get a couple of questions from the folks in the chat. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so we have had some live chats and also some super chats as well. So jumping into those, and also I'm about to run a poll, by the way, on another topic about the trilateral meeting. That will be coming up here in just a second. But jumping into our first super chat from of course, the live chat. This one goes to PRC, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, PRC, for that $20 support. He said, "What message does it send to the world that Putin gets the red carpet, Beast co-ride and flyovers, and Zelensky doesn't even get a meet at the airport? And thanks for the hard work."
Thank you for the support, PRC, and that is a very interesting question. I really don't know what it's supposed to be showing because no European leader actually got the red carpet treatment that arrived here in the United States today, and that is something that I have to say is somewhat odd because these are the elected representatives of the entirety of the nation, whichever one that they're coming from, so it is a little bit odd to see that none of them got the red carpet treatment. Considering, though, that none of them got the red carpet treatment, I don't really know what we can make of it because we do understand the U.S. position with the Europeans is one of reconciliation at this point for the actions taken in the prior part of this year, so it is a little bit weird that none of them got a red carpet, and to be entirely honest with you, I really do not know what that lack of decorum could be described as in any greater detail, but I do thank you for the support, PRC, and I hope that does address that the best we can, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Rain Roth, and he puts in a $40 donation, and thank you very much, Rain, for that generous support as well, and also helping to keep us running. He said, "Good coverage today, guys."
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for enjoying our coverage. We try our best. It doesn't appear that the stream was as big as anticipated. It appears that other people out there who run streams like these were able to pull it off a little bit better because they generally have coverage that we don't get because we don't have the licenses to certain kinds of cameras. But I do thank you so much for coming to the stream and enjoying it today because we tried our best, and hopefully it was a pretty decent representation of the situation as it was happening live on air. And so big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and also, by the way, we just got some more pictures out of the White House right now. Apparently, this is a very odd picture, by the way. The European leaders are now waiting in the hallway, it looks like. It looks like they're waiting like in line for the principal's office or something. Go check out this picture, Enforcer. I just reposted on our Twitter page, by the way. So that way you can see here the European leaders right here in the hallway, and that'll be up here on the screen in just a second.
It's not really showing up, so we're going to have to probably...
There, I reposted it again. Let's see if it's there.
There we go.
So there is the European leaders waiting in the hallway right here. You see there is Macron right there at the front. Like I said, a very odd picture because they all appear to have their heads down. They're all looking sort of a little bit tame, honestly. They don't look excited to be there, I can tell you that. So very weird the way that is right there. You'd expect them to be up and talking to each other, but instead they're waiting there very solemnly. So kind of odd.
Yeah, that's pretty odd. I don't really know what's up with that. They're all looking down at the floor as well. Macron seems to be the one most deep in thought. The rest of them may be looking at a paper, possibly, or a pamphlet. It appears that Macron has nothing. So, I don't know what's going on with this. A little bit odd, but a really weird sort of display, considering that some of the most powerful people in Europe, at least as far as the nations are concerned, are currently sitting in this hallway right now in just these chairs, just kind of sitting there. I see some people saying that they're praying. Well, maybe. You never know. Prayers are not always a bad idea. It might actually be a decent idea in the long run. But still an interesting moment nonetheless. And I see some people actually saying that apparently it might be fake, or it might be real. I'm not entirely sure, but I would have to be entirely honest with y'all. I do find it kind of weird that all the European leaders would be sitting in a hallway side by side. And also it appears that someone said, look, yeah, actually it is a fake because there's a third leg right there, and I don't think Macron is that well endowed, to be entirely honest. So this does appear to be an AI fake, so we might want to...
Are you sure? Are you sure about
Yeah.
that? Because that doesn't appear to be. I mean, everybody's showing that as a real picture. Like all the sources I've ever seen that are reliable are showing that as a real picture. So I'm not sure.
Really quickly, like I'll pause this and see if I can. Well, actually, let me just go pull up the stream. I'll show it because I already unposted, but there was a third leg, and it was certainly not the Ursula von der Leyen's, and it was not Macron's either. It was just some
Never
random
seen-
third leg sitting there. So let me go get that really quickly and show y'all. We have streamception going on at the moment. But let me see here. So as you can see, here is Macron sitting right here. Here's his two legs. Then we have Ursula von der Leyen, and you can see her leg and her first shoe is right there. There's then a second one right there, and then there's this leg. Which,
okay, I see it now. I see the third leg now. That's a little bit interesting. Yeah, I think that this might definitely be AI then. So I think a lot of people just got duped by that, including me that just reposted that. So it could be the ghost of Putin past sitting there next to Macron, or it could be AI. There's no telling.
I'd have to say that apparently Macron is one hell of a guy. He actually legitimately has a third leg, and it's such an impressive and grand third leg that he actually adorns it with an additional shoe. I really don't know how he goes about that, however. Like, when he goes to the shoe store, does he buy two pairs of shoes and then just throw one away and put two on his feet and then one on the third leg? Or does, he happen to switch out the two shoes that he got in the second pair from time to time? A little bit unclear on that one. But it also appears that everyone else's legs just generally don't match up. Like, for example, Mertz's foot looks to have been crushed by a Wile E. Coyote anvil from Looney Tunes. It's perfectly flat like a pancake down there. And we can also see that everyone else's shoes look to be somewhat odd as well. Either a little bit too flat or a little bit too thick. One or the other. But God bless Merst. He's going to have to go back and get some of that high-quality German healthcare that they talk about, because his foot looks to have been absolutely crushed. Macron's going to be going back to France, and he's going to be wielding the power of Lyndon B. Johnson. I've actually heard that he's begun to name his third leg, and he's actually named it Jumbo. So it does appear that this picture is about as fake as they can get, to be entirely honest. So not a real one.
All right. Well, I guess in that case, then I'm glad it's not the ghost of Putin past that's sitting there next to him. But yeah, I'm glad that picture is not real though, because I was sitting there looking at it thinking, surely they're not that upset about meeting with everybody, because it doesn't seem to be that serious, like when it comes to being that solemn. So thankfully, it is a phony and it is a fake. So maybe they're in better spirits than that, honestly.
Yeah, I would have to say so. I think they'd have to be in better spirits, and more importantly, they wouldn't be sitting out in the hall side by side like that, like they're at the principal's office. That would just be disrespectful to the leaders of entire nations to treat them in that way, and I have a feeling that most of them wouldn't accept that kind of treatment in reality. So it was really weird when I saw it, and now it makes sense, because apparently it was an AI-made picture that everyone reposted rapidly across Twitter, and apparently everyone's unposting at this point, including ourselves. But still, with that, I hope that does address that well in the meantime. Looks like an interesting little gaffe. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so jumping into our next super chat here, our next one goes to LC39A. And thank you very much, good sir, for that massive $133 donation. And thank you very much, LC, for helping to get the channel running. And also, I know that people are saying that they understand it's not our fault, but seriously, folks, apologies for the issues. Like, it's wild that YouTube had such a major outage literally right as this meeting was starting to take place. And also, at the same time, we're having volume issues with the White House stream. So, honestly, I feel like we kind of dropped the ball ourselves, and also all the other sources, including our platform that we're on, also kind of dropped the ball a little bit themselves. So it just happened to be a bad storm there. But thank you for all understanding that we did our best on that one. But LC39A said, "Sorry I'm late, boss, and I just woke up."
Hey, and a huge shout out to you, LC39A. And a massive thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. I gotta thank you massively for being here with us right now. Thank you for catching us right when you woke up. We were here before you went to sleep, and we were here before you woke up. So we're here at 24/7 nowadays, pretty much. Wonderful, great thing. But beyond that, I do thank you incredibly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and being here at this early time of the morning to help us to generally see and at least support our coverage of the event that transpired, which generally kind of went off course really quickly. It didn't even really cover Ukraine, but we're still here to cover it nonetheless. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again for the massive support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, I was just doing another scan here for breaking news. Also, by the way, let's see. Yeah, everybody is now realizing that that picture that was posted is AI. Everybody's starting to realize the third leg phenomenon that happened there with Mr. Macron sitting in the chair. So it looks like everybody is unposting that, and they're removing it, except for, yeah, everybody's removing it. It actually fooled a lot of people. It fooled actually some large news networks as well, apparently. So that one was a doozy there. I'm glad that is not a real picture. But moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Urban RBL. And they put in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Urban, as well for that support. He said, "For coffee and donuts." And by the way, Urban RBL is Urban Rebel equals James. And I had to shorten it to fit California license plate and to pick a good question from the chat.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, and a good thing to have you here, Urban Rebel. And I gotta thank you massively for enjoying this channel and helping it to keep on running today, because of course it's Monday, it's our off day, and we're still live on our off day covering this development. And I gotta thank you so much for the support and enjoying this channel and helping it to keep on running, and we will make sure to get a live chat in your honor. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so the live chat question goes to Kolra, who said, "Whatever happened with that nuclear-powered missile test? Did it ever take place?"
From what we've heard, it has not taken place yet so far, although the Russians did state that it was going to be happening last Friday. This is generally leading us to believe that there is some sort of a technical difficulty with the test launch of the missile, and the test launch has been postponed by days, so that way technicians can assess the missile's quality, its build structure, and everything else involved with it, and the launch, to make sure that it will operate properly. So we believe that the launch may have run into some test difficulties, and that's also why there's been no published information as to why the launch is late, is because if there was technical difficulties, that's something that the Russian Federation will like to generally keep under wraps, although it's quite obvious that they have not conducted the missile test yet. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you once again for sponsoring a live chat and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible and help us to keep this thing running. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat here is going to go to Smarzig, and Smarzig put in a 10, and he said, "One of those reporters in there has some balls." And honestly, I'm not going to comment on him because the individual happens to be super political, so we would comment on the reporter, but even the reporters themselves have become somewhat political figures, which shouldn't be the case. They're not supposed to be political, but, you know, that's why people aren't watching mainstream media anymore. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I thank you for the support. I'd have to generally say that my assessment of the press in that room wasn't really the greatest. Not speaking on any particular one, but the questions were either softballs or they weren't even pertaining to the matter at hand, which was the meeting between the President of the United States and Zelensky. I found that to be a little bit odd, and I was wondering why in the world they were so far off track. I mean, you know, we originally started with Ukraine walking into a room with the understanding that it's the largest war in Europe since World War II, and then people started talking about domestic political matters like that was the more pressing situation. Generally, my assessment of the press, and especially nowadays, is that it's incredibly bad and not that good. So with that, I hope that has addressed it the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. So our next one here is going to be a super chat from Darren Quinn. And Darren put in a 10. And thank you very much, Darren, as well for that support. He said, thanks for not wearing a tie, President Zelensky.
And thank you for the support. And it appears that he almost wore a full suit, but not quite. But I'm sure that's fine. I mean, you know, there's been plenty of people who've gone to the White House who technically haven't worn a suit. So I'm sure he'll be fine. It looks like he ended up being okay today. Not really a big deal or an issue was made out of it all too much at all, honestly, rather than one question from the press, which was a little bit of a silly question. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one. And big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running.
All right. And also, by the way, folks, I'm not sure what is going on today, but I'm not sure if it's a cyber attack that's happening across multiple different platforms or what, but I'm seeing reports now, some early reports, that Starlink is apparently down, or at least in some places, Starlink might be down. But that's a preliminary report. I'm not really sure how widespread that is. But I am seeing a couple people on Twitter, looks like Insider Paper, said that multiple users are reporting that Starlink is down. So that also happens to come at the same time YouTube's having some pretty large issues. So I don't know what's going on with that. Seems like odd timing that the meeting with Zelensky took place, and then we had major cyber issues as well. So kind of interesting there. But moving on to our next super chat. This one goes to the B Knight 3, who puts in a 5, and he said, for good luck.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for wishing us good luck. Hopefully, it turned out somewhat well, but it really didn't, like, at least today. Everything's going wrong, and generally, the stream has been not really up to spec, I guess you could say, in some ways. But a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Ronald, who puts in a 5. And Ronald said, just a little gratitude that y'all are here on the day off, and LSA rules.
Hey, and thank you so much for your support. We put in a great deal of effort every single day of the week, all the time, 24/7, and trying to make sure that this news gets reported, including today. And I hope that folks have been enjoying it as much as they can. Cyber attacks, everything in mind, the world blowing up, the asteroids falling from the sky, that whole deal, and everything else involved, all the other additional things that have been involved into getting the stream live today. We thank y'all all for appreciating it, because it is folks like y'all who help us to keep this thing rolling day in and day out, and to keep this news well and alive. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to be, and also, by the way, folks, I am scanning to see if there's any more breaking news breaking out right now. Right now, it appears to be the meeting between the U.S. President and Zelensky behind closed doors is still ongoing. So we do not hear oh, wait a minute. Hold on a second. We got some breaking news right now. So, okay, so we got some big breaking news, actually. So the meeting between Zelensky and the U.S. president is ongoing right now, but the Kremlin is weighing in live as this is happening. The Kremlin's not happy, like we were pretty much expecting, kind of like I said as well. The Kremlin is stating that they will definitely reject any Western troops deployed on Ukrainian land, and that's exactly what I predicted just a moment ago. I said that I would be shocked if Putin accepted that with the U.S. troops on Ukrainian soil. So he is outright rejecting that right this second. He didn't even wait for the phone call from the U.S. president before he rejected that. So that is how strongly opposed Putin is to that whole situation, and that was predictable. That was extremely predictable. So I think we might be seeing a very, very bad roadblock starting right here, I would say. But Enforcer, what say you?
It does appear the Russian Federation is not too pleased, which we generally did expect, because anything beyond unconditional surrender, the Russians were not going to be all too happy with. So it does appear the Russians are already weighing in that they're pissed and angry and livid. I'm sure Medvedev will be back to his drunken rants on Twitter as usual, but it does appear they are already weighing in and not too pleased with the developments at all before any real developments have actually come out. It was only the press conference, and the Russians are already panicking and getting irate at the press conference, which is nothing shocking, to be entirely honest. But with that development in mind, it's time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, so moving on here to our next one, and I'll keep scanning for breaking news as it's happening, folks, because right now it appears to be that the Kremlin is getting very angry about the way this meeting is going. They're not happy about it. So moving on to our next super chat, this one goes to Detroit Adam, who puts in a 10, and thank you very much, Adam, for that support. He said, great show, Enforcers. Best free and fair, best news show on the air, and thank you. You guys rock, and please say hi to Lainey Danger for me. Happy 18 years, or 18 days old, baby, and LSA for life.
Hey, and a huge shout out to Lainey Danger. Happy 18 days old. congratulations to you, Detroit Adam, once again. And I also got to say that thank you so much for enjoying that the show is free and runs off of viewer support. We don't have any channel memberships. We don't have any sponsors on these streams. They run entirely off of viewer support and have been for 3.5 years. And I got to thank you so much once again for supporting the channel and greatly enjoying that fact, because I've always prided the channel greatly on that fact that we make it as accessible as possible and really focus more so on the kind of impact that our channel has more than the money to really be made. But a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, for all the people asking about whether or not the Zapad exercise between Belarus and Russia is still on, that is still on, by the way. So that is still something that we're watching for. A lot of people are asking questions about that, especially considering the fact that the Kremlin's already getting upset about how the Zelensky situation is going. People are asking questions, and we will address that later during our live chats, specifically that situation as a whole. So with that, we are now moving on to our next super chat, and this one goes to Darren Quinn, and he puts in a 10. He said, "Thanks for being the LSA, and love Ukraine."
Hey, and thank you so much, Darren Quinn, for being a part of the Lee Spring Army, and also appreciating the amazing community of the LSA, which is an absolutely incredible one. So a huge thanks to you so much once again, Darren Quinn. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, it's time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, so we do have some more breaking news coming out right this second. So right now we are hearing that apparently there was a bit of a leak that occurred right before the closed-door negotiations started between the U.S. President and Zelensky. One major news outlet, which I'm not going to name them right off the bat right this second, but y'all will kind of see it on the screen probably, but a large map of Ukraine was installed in the Oval Office right before the start of the closed-door negotiations, and the map was placed opposite the table at which the U.S. President and Zelensky were sitting as some of the journalists were asked to leave the office. So what that does indicate, in my opinion, is they were about to start discussing potentially conceding land to Russia. That's probably what they were about to start talking about, because the only reason they'd bring a map up showing the contested regions would be to see if Zelensky was open to maybe giving away parts of it, so that way they could show graphically which parts they were potentially going to give away. So that's probably what's being talked about behind closed doors. I'm glad to see that wasn't discussed in front of the press, by the way, because that could have gone sideways really quickly. They kept the spicy part behind closed doors this time, which is the way it should have been the first time, but it looks like they've done the right thing, at least on this meeting. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that that's a fairly interesting development. It does appear to show that they were going to be speaking about possible land concessions that the Ukrainians might consider, but we already know that the Ukrainians will be shooting those down. But the map was most likely just to illustrate what kind of land concessions the Russians were looking for, possibly, or what the Russian demands may be. So an interesting development, once again giving us a little bit of an additional insight as to what's being talked about at this moment inside of the Oval Office. But nevertheless, I hope that does address that the best we can, at least as far as that development is going right now. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a $5 support from Luke UK. And thank you very much, Luke, as well, for that $5 support, and we appreciate that very much. We also have a 5 from Halligan218. And Halligan said, "Thank you for covering this on the day off. And fingers crossed this goes well, but it's hard to keep my hopes high." And LSA.
And LSA, and I got to thank you so much for the support, and I also got to thank you for the kind words as well. Things seem to have been going good so far, at least at the moment compared to the last time, but you never really know. Things can always take a 180, things could change at the last minute. It really is something that you just got to play by the ebb and flow of it on a day-to-day basis, or really a minute-to-minute basis right now at this moment, and that is certainly the case right now, Halligan. So I got to say, a big thanks to you once again for the support, and also I have my fingers crossed for high hopes as well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a $5 support from K98 Killer, who said, last time Zelensky reneged on the minerals deal and antagonized the U.S. president, and then started shouting, "Not an ambush." This time he follows basic decorum. I don't know. I would say last time, and this is just my personal opinion, I'm not getting political here with this. I would say last time there was a little bit of blame on everybody. I would say the way Zelensky was treated last time was not great, but Zelensky also didn't respond the greatest either. So it was kind of an all-around blame sort of to go around to all the individuals involved with the last White House meeting. So I would generally say Zelensky was the guest, so he should have been treated better, but I would say they all kind of have a little bit of accountability there. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that that's a little bit of a whitewashed view of it in a sense, because generally the reason why Ukraine did not sign the mineral deal is because they had been told before they arrived that if they signed the mineral deal, they were going to be given American security guarantees. And when Zelensky arrived, literally just an hour before the meeting, a special messenger was pretty much sent to the Capitol, where Zelensky was at that time meeting representatives, and then stated to him in advance before he arrived that there were going to be no security guarantees by the United States of America, and then he was just going to have to sign the mineral deal anyways, with nothing given as due consideration in return by the United States. So, in a sense, you could say that that may have been the reason why it all started. But if you look at it in a greater lens, that generally was the reason why he refused to sign the mineral deal, is because he had been told and arrived in the United States with the concept that there were going to be security guarantees in writing given to Ukraine if he signed the mineral deal. They were actually going to be in writing inside the mineral deal, and then that was found out to not be the case. That's generally why things went sour pretty quick. That's also why back in the day, when it happened, a lot of people were questioning the kind of decision that had been made with that, and what kind of a bait and switch that was, because it pretty much invited him over, and then it reneged on something that was incredibly important for Ukrainian security, and then Zelensky was made to look like the bad guy because he came to the United States with the concept of Ukraine would give the United States half of their minerals, and in exchange, they would get American security guarantees. So it's a little bit more nuanced in reality, but I generally say that as far as it went in the White House itself, a lot of people were to blame. No one really acted with a great deal of decorum. But still, that appears to be the general situation that we saw. But a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, another piece of news has just come out, and I think we might have missed this part right here because the live stream came on late from the White House. So I'm not sure why that was, but it came on really late. So we missed a small little segment of it. But apparently the U.S. president has stated that he will not end U.S. aid to Ukraine if the talks are unsuccessful. So he's saying that if Zelensky decides he is not going to agree to concede land, then the U.S. will keep selling weapons to Europe, and Europe will keep giving those weapons to Ukraine, which means that Zelensky is not going to be abandoned. That's basically the end of the line right there. And also, that is probably going to piss Putin off even more because he was expecting, or I would assume that Putin's goal was, to convince the U.S. president to abandon Ukraine and turn Ukraine into the scapegoat. And it sounds like that is not going that way, which is honestly a bit of a shock to me, at least on my end. But Enforcer, what say you?
That is an interesting sort of a development, to say the least. But it does appear that the U.S. position has been changing rapidly, most likely because they've been confronted with the brick wall that is Putin, because Putin will not stop this war no matter what. And of course, the loss of Ukraine in the conflict will be viewed as a defeat on the U.S. end. So it appears that the president's having to try and slowly or quietly change his approach to the whole situation to make sure that Ukraine doesn't lose, but at the same time to make it not as obvious that the Russians are really the reason why the war keeps going. So that generally seems to be the development in a nutshell. And so with that, we are on to the next one. Before we move on into the next one, we actually understand that there's a poll being run that everyone's weighed in on so far. Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So the big question is, this is what the big question is coming out of this meeting right now with Zelensky and the U.S. president. Will there be that infamous trilateral meeting taking place between Zelensky, the U.S. president, and Putin following this meeting today at the White House? 81% said no, while 19% said yes. So the overwhelming majority of people, 81%, believe there will be no trilateral meeting with Putin and Zelensky. And I would say the odds, in my opinion, of a trilateral meeting taking place is minuscule at this point. You better go buy a lottery ticket because I think at this point the odds of winning the lottery or having this trilateral meeting might be about getting close to the same thing. I would say it's pretty low at this point, especially with Putin already getting so anxious about the situation that he's getting his spokespeople to already say he won't agree to U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine. So not looking good whatsoever. In fact, this meeting today might have the opposite effect that the U.S. was hoping for. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would generally have to say that I do not believe that there will be a trilateral meeting. I generally believe there would not be a trilateral meeting no matter what, because we generally do assume that the Russian Federation was going to find whatever came out of Washington unacceptable, even if the Ukrainians had accepted practically everything in terms of land concessions. There were additional demands made by the Russian Federation that made it incredibly clear that there would still be no actual consensus made by either side or either party involved in actually ending the war. So I think it was pretty much a surefire guarantee that there was never going to be a trilateral meeting, but now at this point it's certain that there will not be a trilateral meeting of any type that's happening in the future. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, real quick, just to let everybody know, apparently Russia is still striking Ukraine as we speak during these talks. So obviously not good. It looks like they're striking in the Donetsk Oblast this evening with ballistic missiles in the city of Sloviansk. And we had seen earlier that a large portion of Ukraine, I think almost all of it, was under an air raid alert literally as this meeting was starting. So yeah, Russia is still attacking civilians, even in the midst of demanding peace. And also another thing that I don't think we showed earlier is Russia is now sending troops into battle with armored personnel carriers carrying a Russian flag and a U.S. flag on the same vehicle. That happened earlier today. And obviously, I think that's an attempt to mock the United States while they're also trying to fool them and dupe them into believing that Ukraine's the bad guy. So Russia's clearly acting like a fool still. There's no change with that. And also, we're still seeing attacks. But jumping into our next super chat here, this one goes to LC39A once again. And he throws in another massive support, by the way. And thank you very much, good sir, for that $134 support. That's very generous of you. He said, "Are you on tonight or are you taking time off for good behavior? LOL."
We are taking time off. Today is technically an off day. We rarely ever run a stream on Mondays unless there's something major is going on or something huge. And this was a big enough event that it warranted getting on to air. Although it does appear that we may have been outshined a little bit by the competition out there that's also covering this. But beyond that, I would have to say that it is generally we're not going to be on tonight because the streaming schedule is 6 days a week, every day at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, except for Mondays. But I do think thank you for the massive, incredibly huge support once again, LC39A, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running. So a massive thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, Enforcer, people are asking to see that video real quick of the Russian flag and the U.S. flag on that carrier. I'm going down to grab it real quick so that way we can show it to everybody real quick. Let's see here. I put it under the likes tab, by the way. It should be there right now.
All right, and let's go take a look at that really quickly. And yeah, here it is. This was near to Mala Tokmachka, which unfortunately I wouldn't be able to do geolocation off the top of my head, folks. Been having a little bit of difficult time focusing at the moment, but we can see here the APC. It appears to be in a command BRDM, most likely, or a BMD, racing down a road with an American and a Russian flag on top, surrounded by a cope cage. We can see the Ukrainians fast-forwarding the footage, as it appears that this vehicle is traveling most likely around 20 miles per hour or so, and we can also see another APC, or the same one, deploying a smoke screen or venting a great deal of exhaust after it's been hit by an FPV.
Also, by the way, Enforcer, let's get a quick validity check here. Some people are saying or claiming that, or at least two people are, they're saying the video is maybe fake. I watched the video earlier and it didn't appear to be fake, but what do you think? Does it appear to be fake or not?
It doesn't appear to be fake. The graphical quality is the same that we would see normally. This also appears to be attached to the two radio antennas. This is also a command variant of one of these armored personnel carriers, meaning that it would have a large variety of antennas to be able to mount flags from, and usually on modern military vehicles, these sorts of flags are mounted onto the antennas. So with that in mind, I would generally say that this is an authentic video, and the Russians really did put an American flag on an APC. Because once again, you can see that as the vehicle takes bumps and turns, the flag actually waves. If this was a fake video, they would not really have the wiggle physics down incredibly well. That would take a very long time to render that sort of a thing, and also to be able to animate it, and also a great deal of money. And most people wouldn't really put out that kind of expense and money for a war clip that not really a lot of people are going to be seeing. I also some people saying that the flags look fake. I mean, the flags are just clean. Just because it's on a battlefield doesn't mean that it's always going to be covered in dirt and muck and have a whole bunch of shrapnel holes in it. Usually most flags on battlefields actually remain well intact until they're hit once, and then they're torn to shreds in that one hit. So generally this does appear to actually be an authentic clip. And I saw someone say that it was an M113, and from what I can tell, it does not appear to be. Well, actually, as a matter of fact, let me look at that. No, it couldn't be, because there's this weird little angular bump right up here, which seems to be more indicative of that of a BMD, possibly, or some sort of an MTLB command variant, more so than anything like an M113 or any other type of vehicle. But once again, watch the flags as it moves over the terrain, and you can clearly see that the flags, or the antennas that they're attached to for the larger part, are actually responding to the terrain itself, which is something that would be incredibly difficult and expensive to animate. Not only that, we can also see that some of the flags are actually flying in an erratic pattern, and the flags are still on the vehicle at practically every angle. All of this would be really difficult to animate or CGI onto a scene, and AI isn't that good to be able to do it. And we can also see the flags finally were knocked off from some of the explosions, which also is once again showing us this seems to be a fairly authentic clip. But I hope that does address that well, or at least go through a bit of a debunking on that, because it does appear that that is not the case. And so with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next super chat. This one goes to Darren Quinn yet again. He puts in a 10 and says, in memoriam to the red carpet Putin received, and did Hot Dog roll his own?
Yeah, he did roll his own. Of course he did. He lost another 100, most likely. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say, rest in peace to that carpet. Hopefully it was burned after that meeting ended. But a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address it the best I can. And we are on to the next one.
All right. Also, by the way, speaking about the update about the potential cyber attacks on Western infrastructure, it looks like NetBlocks, at least according to what I'm seeing here from Disclosed TV on Twitter, is also reporting a significant outage of Starlink. So it appears to be that there's been some type of tampering. I'm not sure if, and of course, obviously everybody wants to point fingers at Russia right off the bat. There's nothing to indicate that Russia has launched this cyber attack, or even if it is a cyber attack. But the odds of everything having major issues all at the same time seems a bit odd to me. So we'll have to wait and see if it's reported that this is a cyber attack, maybe later on today. But it seems to be very odd timing, like I mentioned earlier. But jumping into our next super chat question, this one goes to Blaze Gamer, and he put in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Blaze, as well. He said, I'm concerned about the Zapad exercises between Belarus and Russia. And if there's any time for Russia to invade the West, it's then. And though I'm glad that Europe is stepping up hard, and I appreciate y'all working on your rest day.
And thank you so much for the support, Blaze Gamer, and thank you for appreciating us working on the rest day. And I would have to say that Zapad military exercise is quite concerning. The buildup is significant. The amount of regiments present are from the Moscow military district, which is generally considered to be a surge district. It's generally designed to be one. And also the fact that they're directly along the Suwalki Gap in a war game designed to prepare for an invasion of the Suwalki Gap is clearly showing us that, at least for this moment, it does appear that a military invasion of the Suwalki Gap may be possible. Not only that, but the European Parliament, in a question and answer segment, was actually asked directly about the situation and did state that they themselves also believe that it may be a prelude to a military invasion by the Russian Federation within that area. So I definitely have to agree with you, Blaze Gamer. It is a fairly concerning sort of a development, but it is good to know that the Europeans have been rapidly arming at this point to be able to try and meet the coming crisis that we've been hearing about for some time at this point. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to T. Morgan, who puts in a 5. And Morgan said, thanks for going live early, Enforcers. A rare treat for the LSA and from the UK branch.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for enjoying our stream all the way over in the United Kingdom. I know that a lot of people really do enjoy these midday streams. Well, at least some people do enjoy the midday streams. The viewership on the stream hasn't been what is normally expected. Usually we get somewhere in between 13 to 16,000 live viewers most nights. Right now we're getting about 5.8, so not necessarily the largest stream, but it is what it is. But beyond that, I do thank you so much for being from the United Kingdom and supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to sit here and get to run this lovely stream every day. But we do have breaking news coming out at this moment. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so we do have here apparently another live stream starting from the White House on their website. It looks like they are wrapping up the closed-door talks, which appears to have not taken very long, which is quite interesting. It probably didn't get anywhere, to be honest, but let's see here. It appears to be the U.S. president will be participating in a family photo, a big family with the European leaders. That's going to be coming up here very soon, and we're waiting on that live stream to start here in just a moment. So it looks like a big family photo. So it looks like the talks with Zelensky maybe lasted only about 20 to 25 minutes, which might indicate that Zelensky simply said, I'm not giving up land, and that's the end of it. And they might have said, okay, then I guess that's all the talking we need to do at that point then. But Enforcer, what do you think?
That most likely is the case. It most likely is the fact that the Russian demands were talked about. The Ukrainians absolutely refused them because they were unacceptable, and then the president just took that for what it is. Or we might find out that the president didn't take that for what it is and may have ended up changing his mind. You just never know. But beyond that, it does appear that, at least for now, they are preparing for a little family photo. We all know that it's a family company around here, so everyone's got to make sure to get their family photo as a part of the corporate policy up here in the United States of America. We're we're all into that, Disney, Whataburger, hamburger, cheeseburger, Big Mac, Whopper, that sort of a deal. So they got to have the family photo. But beyond that, it does appear that at the moment, they didn't really seem that it took long to lay out the Russian demands and for the Ukrainians to outright refuse them. So we are currently waiting for this live stream to commence from the White House, and really quickly to explain to you all how it's going to go. Before we even get into that from the technical side, I cannot turn up the volume on OBS or any other situation for that matter, and I'll explain the technical side of it. Generally, Enforcer Matt's microphone is way louder than mine, to the point that some people would describe it, when I did not have the audio set normally, to it being absolute ear defilement. It took about an entire week of adjusting that audio a while ago to be able to get that set up properly, so we really can't change that again because we have to go through literal points, percentage fractions of decibels to be able to make sure to get that fixed again. So we generally don't want to mess with that too much, because if I remember correctly, OBS actually doesn't give a number. I literally have to slide the scale around every night and then see what works, and that takes a lot of time on air and it distracts people. This is not really something we could do. One thing I can do, however, is turn up my audio in my headset, because the audio that y'all are hearing is directly from my desktop, meaning that if I turn up the audio on my headset, the desktop audio is turning up, meaning that the audio is louder for all of y'all. That is the one thing that we can do to make it a little bit louder, and because of that, during the time that this stream will be live, we will not be talking, because if we talked during that time, it would be so loud, it would most likely bust out all of your eardrums. I know that, at least specifically for Enforcer Matt, because he's also a part of the desktop audio, it would be busting out everyone's eardrums. So we've got to make sure to keep everything balanced as we can, but also turn up the audio in the way that would make the most sense. So if the audio is quiet, we're very sorry, but on the behalf of the White House itself, we unfortunately do not get to control the audio that the White House is transmitting. We only get to show the live stream that the White House is playing, and that's about it. But at the moment, we are waiting for the stream to start. It does appear that, at least for the moment, Zelensky and the president have most likely gone into separate rooms to talk to their staffs about what's going to be happening or what the future of the situation will be. And there may also be a phone call being conducted by the president of the United States to the Russian President Vladimir Putin to also see what his position was on what was concluded in the talks and what is going to be happening from there. So we will be waiting to see what's going on with that. But in the meantime, we are simply on standby.
All right. So also, by the way, we are hearing, by the way, that Zelensky is going to give an interview to Fox News. Of all the news networks, he's going to give one to Fox News again. But anyways, though, apparently this will be after the meeting with the U.S. president. So it looks like tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern, which should be 5 o'clock Central Time, which is our time, Zelensky will have an interview out, an exclusive interview with Fox. So that should be interesting to watch as well. I presume that he will tell us a little bit more about what happened during this meeting right here. And we also might hear from the U.S. president during this family photo that takes place here shortly. Maybe. It's a little bit of a question mark right now. So that's what we're waiting on. And also, by the way, we are hearing another statement from the Russian Foreign Ministry, by the way. The Foreign Ministry has jumped into the fray. They said Putin will categorically not accept the deployment of NATO troops in Ukraine, and this is fraught with uncontrolled escalation. So they're threatening war against the West already. That's from the Russian Foreign Ministry, so obviously not a good sign. But Enforcer, what say you?
It does appear the Russian Federation is still making it incredibly clear that they are not going to be accepting anything that came out of this today, which does mean that the war is going to be continuing. Surprise, surprise, to many people, the war is not going to be ending because the Russians are not going to agree to it. So it does appear that the war will be going on for some time, and it also does appear that, at least as far as the United States will be involved in the conflict, we will continue to sell and supply the state of Ukraine with arms and weaponry, but it does appear that at the moment, the congressional appetite and the presidential appetite for continuing to support congressional drawdowns to be able to just find the funds and then send the equipment their way will no longer be existing, and they'll have to buy the weapons outright. There really isn't a huge difference between the two, because either way we did it, generally the money was going into the defense industries, manufacturers in the current day and age. To be entirely honest with you all, is better as a congressional drawdown, because as a congressional drawdown, we were sending Ukraine our second-hand equipment that was generally getting a second wind in Ukraine, and it already existed a full service life here in the United States. Now with the current arrangement, when the Ukrainians buy military equipment, sometimes they're actually buying new equipment directly off of the assembly lines, which could actually be used here in America to replace that aging equipment that could have just been given to Ukraine to have a second life there, and then we install the brand new spanking replacement. It appears that we're doing it the other way around, and generally the Europeans are going to be the one footing the bill for that, instead of the U.S. Congress just giving off old equipment and then acquiring new equipment through their congressional drawdown. drawdown. So I would have to say a fairly interesting development, but beyond that, that's generally the U.S. position that will be seen throughout the remainder of the war so far, while we're waiting on the remaining position of this live stream here from the White House to start, so that we can start to see what's going to be happening with this family photo with the European leaders. It's a big family, because we're a family company here in the Western world, and we always love to know that we can beat the Russians together as a family. But still, with that appears to be all we have for the moment, so we'll be getting on into...
Wait, we got some breaking news right this second. So we have heard, this is coming out from Max25 on Twitter, that apparently there is no joint statement planned after the Trump-Zelensky talks. So to me, what that tells me personally is that apparently there will be probably no trilateral meeting, because if they're not even making a joint statement, there's no progress being made apparently between Zelensky and the U.S. president. I don't think that's a good sign when it comes to a quote-unquote peace deal. But honestly, though, it was never really a peace deal. It was a capitulation deal. So I would say, honestly, this is probably the best result out of it, that there is no joint statement coming out. Because if there was one, it would probably be reporting on the fact that maybe Zelensky decided to give up some land, but he's already stated he can't do that. So, Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it does appear that there wasn't really a lot talked about or really said or done in terms of progress in that meeting. It does appear that both sides will be returning back to wherever they came from. The president from the Oval Office just a couple of 100 yards away, or just a couple of 100 feet away, depending on where they are exactly once this press conference starts.
We're live. It's live, by the way. It looks like they're walking through the thing.
All right, we're going to be turning the audio up, so we will not be talking during the duration of the clip. Actually, correction, we will be talking for now. I'll be turning down the audio because it doesn't appear that there's any audio on this live stream, oddly enough, but we can see them all standing for the picture. From left to right, we have Chancellor, well, actually, the EU Counselor Ursula von der Leyen, the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, the President of Finland, President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, the President of the French Republic, Emmanuel Macron, the Italian Prime Minister Meloni, then we have Friedrich Merz, and then we also have the NATO General Secretary Mark Rutte to the far right.
So it is true. This did not last long at all. This was extremely short because to meet with the European leaders already, that means the Zelensky talk must have lasted less than 10 minutes at that rate, based on the time that's elapsed.
Yeah, I'd have to say so. Also, is Starmer bow-legged? Like his legs, I don't know. Like, either his pant legs were in a really weird way or something. I'm not entirely sure. But now we can see them all wandering off after the group photo. And that was
it. That was all the stream. That was like nothing. That was like, what, a minute or something. That wasn't even worth streaming.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. And also, folks, I know y'all said unmute the browser. We did for a minute, and there was no audio, so we just muted it back and then turned it up. But anyways, with that, that's the end of the clip right there. Fairly interesting to see, and that appeared to be the entirety of the stream. It lasted about 1 minute, maybe 1.5 minutes. They took the picture, and then they wandered off. So that was that. Not really a lot done there, and not really a lot to see. So we will be waiting to see. And I see some people talking about all of the folks that were in the picture. I'm not here to make political comments about him. I was just bringing up the bow-legged thing because, like, I'm not kidding. His pant legs literally looked like they were, like, bending outwards and, like, almost an O. I was like, what the hell? I was like, no, like, if he is, no one's ever said that. Like, if that is something that is a fact about him, I never knew that until now. Also, Friedrich Merz is like a mutant. Like, that guy is like 6'5", absolute giant. We actually talked about that on stream a couple of days ago, and actually joked that Merz is so tall that he could probably make it from his home in Dusseldorf all the way to Berlin in about 3 steps. 3 long steps though. You would have to really high step it, but he could make it all the way. The first footfall would be somewhere around Kassel, the second one in Magdeburg, and then the third in Berlin. So 3 footsteps, he's straight in Berlin and at his job in the Reichstag. But nevertheless, it does appear that they are continuing to conduct their little meeting. They've now wandered off once again out of the view of the cameras, and we'll be waiting to see if there is another live stream at all. But at this moment, it doesn't really appear that there are going to be a lot of major developments, at least in the public eye, that we're going to get to see. And if they are, they're incredibly intermittent, short, and don't really provide a great deal of detail or context as to what's actually being discussed. So with that, it is time for us to move on into the next one.
All right. So right now, apparently, we're being told that the European leaders, the U.S. president and Zelensky, are now going into a together talk in a different room. It looks like it's closed to the press. Based on the schedule, though, there should be some type of on-video event after that, though, but they're not going to be making a joint statement. So whatever comes out of it, we're going to have to hear it from Zelensky on the interview tonight, which will obviously be way after we're done streaming. So we're not going to get to hear from these individuals what has taken place, which is an indication that progress has not been made. And in fact, nothing has been achieved, or they would at least report something to the public, but they're not reporting anything. So very short talk between Zelensky and the U.S. president. So it looks like it went almost the exact way we thought it was going to be, which was no progress coming out of it. But at least Zelensky was treated decent this time. At least that was an upgrade. But with that, moving on to our next super chat, this one goes to 4D Modding, and they put in a 10. And it said, Enforcer, do you think Russia can last another 12 months?
I think they can. I think they can last up to 2 years from this point right now, economically and militarily. But how well off they are by the time they collapse in that next year or two, that's going to be interesting to see. We actually don't know how bad off they'll be. They could be extremely bad off next to the level of North Korea by the time they actually capitulate, or largely just start to collapse. But I do think that they can last a little bit beyond a year at this point, because one thing that we've learned, especially from this war, is that modern wars can be as long and grueling as wars of the past. This war has lasted for 3.5 years now. Give it another 6 months, and this war has lasted the entire time that the United States was involved in World War II, from December 7th of 1941 all the way up until I believe it was August 7th of 1945. So once again, this is already getting to the length of the time that the United States was involved in World War II. And given that in mind, and given that a lot of people, including ourselves, were going off original analysis saying that the Russians would collapse quickly within the first 2 years, and now it's 3.5 years in, and they're still just getting to the point of collapsing, I think it might be another 2 years. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to none other than K98 Killer once again, who puts in a 5. And they said, by the way, by reneged, I mean that he refused to sign the negotiated deal, which was the whole reason he went to the White House the first time.
And I would have to say, let me reread that one really quickly. Well, I mean, he refused to sign the negotiated deal because the negotiated deal had changed right when he had arrived, pretty much. That's generally why he refused to sign it. Because you sit there and you go to buy a used car, and they say, oh yeah, the used car is just fine. I mean, the tires have rotted off of it, but we can replace them. And then you show up to the used car dealership, and right as you're signing the contract, they say, oh yeah, by the way, we added a clause in the contract saying specifically that we're not going to replace the rotted out tires on that car. You're going to have to do it. I mean, obviously, you would also renege on signing that contract. You would say, well, wait a minute, I came here with the idea that the tires would be replaced, and now you're saying that it's not. But apparently the White House, it might be live again from what we're hearing, and really quickly, let me go and check just to make sure, we're
So
doing.
it looks like the U.S. president is speaking at this meeting with the European leaders, but the White House is late to stream it again. So it should be hopping on here in just a second if they're going to stream that part.
And hopefully we'll see that it's live here soon. And even still, it takes them time. It takes them a lot of time to set up. The White House is incredibly slow, and I don't really think that we can count on their cameras again to carry the day, at least for us here on this channel, because in case y'all don't know, the reason why other channels are able to show this on their feeds and cameras is because they pay exorbitant amount to get camera licenses, which is something that we generally would use so little, it doesn't really justify the expenditure for our show to be able to do that. So that's generally why we're having to rely on the White House while everyone else has live feeds of it. So we are waiting to see if the White House will go live, and when they go live, we'll try and watch it. And hopefully,
I got you a link right here. I got you a link. I'm sending it to you right now in Discord. Let's go ahead and hop on that link real quick. It's to the White House YouTube page, by the way.
All right, and let's take a little look here.
Dignitary, and I liked him from day one. And I like him even more now. That's pretty good. That's unusual. That's a pretty unusual thing. Prime Minister Meloni of Italy, who's a really a great leader and an inspiration over there. She's served now, even though she's a very young person, she's served there for a long period of time relative to others. They don't last very long. You've lasted a long time. You're going to be there a long time. Chancellor Merz of Germany, who is very strong person and a very strong leader and very highly respected in Germany. And he's my friend, and it's an honor to have him as my friend. Thank you very much. Very good. You look great with your tan. Where did you get that tan? I want to get a tan like that. President Stubb of Finland, and he's somebody that, where are we here? Huh? Where? Oh, you look better than I've ever seen you look. But you've done a great job, and we wanted to have you here because you're somebody that we all respect. And you've had a lot to do with the success, I think, and the potential success. And thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it. And the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, who is somebody that we just made a big deal with all of those countries. I don't know. I think you might be more powerful than all these guys at this table. I don't know. But we had a great negotiation, and you're respected all over the world. So I want to thank you very much for being here. It's a great honor to have you. The Alaska Summit reinforced my belief that while difficult, peace is within reach, and I believe that in a very significant step, President Putin agreed that Russia would accept security guarantees for Ukraine, and this is one of the key points that we need to consider, and we're going to be considering that at the table also, like who will do what, essentially. I'm optimistic that collectively we can reach an agreement that would deter any future aggression against Ukraine, and I actually think there won't be. I think that's even overrated, largely overrated, but we're going to find out, and I think that the European nations are going to take a lot of the burden. We're going to help them, and we're going to make it very secure. We also need to discuss the possible exchanges of territory, taking into consideration the current line of contact. That means the war zone, the war lines that are pretty obvious, very sad, actually, to look at them. And negotiating positions. President Putin, also, you have President of Ukraine, who is you just met a little while ago, and we're going to try and get a three-party meeting, maybe as soon as we can. And I have a feeling you and President Putin are going to work something out. Ultimately, this is a decision that can only be made by President Zelensky and by the people of Ukraine working also together in agreement with President Putin. And I just think that's very good things are going to come of it. So I hope we have a good meeting. And if we can have a good meeting, I'll set up a meeting with President Putin. And if you'd like, I'll go to that meeting. And not that I want to do that, but I will do that because we want to save a lot of people from dying. A lot of people are dying, and we got to save them. Got to save it. 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 people sometimes a week. All of us would obviously prefer an immediate ceasefire while we work on a lasting peace, and maybe something like that could happen. As of this moment, it's not happening, but President Zelensky and President Putin can talk a little bit more about that. You know, in the 6 or so wars that we stopped, we haven't had a ceasefire. And so I don't know that it's necessary. You can do it through the war, but it would be, I like the ceasefire from another standpoint. You immediately stop the killing. But I believe a peace agreement at the end of all of this is something that's very attainable, and it can be done in the near future. With all of the wars that I got involved in, we only have this one left. Of course, as I walk out the door, there'll probably be a new one starting, and I'll get that stopped too. But I thought this was going to be one of the easier ones. It's actually one of the most difficult and very complex. The next step would be for a trilateral meeting, and that will be worked out. And I just look forward to working and having a great result. We're going to spend a lot of time today talking about, and we're really honored you guys came over. I mean, these are the heads of major countries and respected all over Europe. And they speak for, largely, I think I should say, but pretty much for the other countries of Europe. And we will come to a resolution today, I think, on almost everything, including probably the security. And that's pretty much the story. I'd like to say, Mr. President, would you like to say something? You have the media. If you want, you could come over and you could stand, you could use mine, or you could just turn around, whichever you feel comfortable with.
Thank you so much. I can speak without microphone. Thank you so much. I think that we had very good conversation with President Trump.
Very good.
And it really was the best one. Or sorry, maybe the best one will be in the future. But it was really good. And we spoke about very sensitive points. The first one is security guarantees. And we are very happy with President that all the leaders are here, and the security in Ukraine depends on the United States and on you and on those leaders who are with us in our hearts. They have been online before yesterday, and etc. So a lot of countries on the side of Ukraine, our people, and all of us want to finish this war, stop Russia and stop this war. We spoke about it, and we will speak more about security guarantees. This is very important that the United States gives such strong signal and is ready for security guarantees. The second point, or maybe the first, humanitarian direction, very important to exchange all the prisoners, and I think that President will help. And I was very thankful to your wife again, Mr. President, for the letter about our abducted children, and I hope that really it can be a historic role for the people to bring kids back to the families and be happy at
Get
their
the people
families.
back, yeah.
Yes, this is so important, and I'm happy that we discussed it, this track with the President Trump, and I hope that we will find decisions. And then what is very important, that all the sensitive things, territorial, etc., we will discuss on the level of leaders during trilateral meeting, and President Trump will try to organize such meeting, and he said that he will come or not come. Ukraine will be happy if you will
both
participate.
want me there, I will be there. Yeah,
Yeah,
you know that.
thank you. And I think this is very important. Yes, so security guarantees, bringing kids back, and all our people, not only warriors, first of all warriors, and all the civilians, journalists, a lot of people in prison. So we need them back. And guarantees which will work for the years. We spoke about it, and I showed the President a lot of details on the battlefield, on the map. Thank you so much. Thank you for the map, by the way.
Good map.
It was great. Yeah. I'm thinking how to take it back.
We'll get you.
No. I think that we had constructive, specific meeting, and I'm very thankful to all the leaders who are here, and you help a lot, and so we are happy that we have such big unity today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much,
for hosting us.
Mr.
Thank
President. I think you'll see that President Putin really would like to do something else. I think when we set that up, when we do, I think it's going to be when, not if. I think you're going to see some really positive moves. I know there's over 1,000 prisoners, and I know they're going to release them. Maybe they're going to release them very soon, like immediately, which I think is great. But we're going to set that up today after this meeting. So very good and great remarks. I appreciate it. Mark, as head of NATO, maybe you could say a few words, please.
Yes, I will be very brief. I really want to thank you, President of the United States, dear Donald, for the fact that you, as I said before, broke the deadlock basically with President Putin by starting that dialogue. And I think it was in February that you had the first phone call, and from there we are now where we are today. And that is, I think if we play this well, we could end this. And we have to end this. We have to stop the killing. We have to stop the destruction of Ukraine's infrastructure. It is a terrible war. So I'm really excited. And let's make the best out of today and make sure that from today onwards, we get this thing to an end as soon as possible. I really want to thank you for your leadership, what you are doing for Volodymyr, but of course also all the European colleagues. It is really crucial. And the fact that you have said, I'm willing to participate in the security guarantees is a big step. It's really a breakthrough, and it makes all the difference. So also thank you for that.
Well, NATO also has agreed from 2% to 5%, which is something that is a massive amount of money. And it's 2% that wasn't always paid to 5% that is paid. That's a big difference. And so we appreciate that. That was a great move. Thank you very much. Ursula, maybe on behalf of the Commission, you could say a couple of words.
Yes. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's a very important moment. Indeed, we are here, Europeans, as friends and allies. We had a fantastic NATO summit. Together as the two largest and biggest economies in the world, we had the largest trade deal ever agreed. And now we are here to work together with you on a just and lasting peace for Ukraine. Stop the killing. This is really our common interest, stop the killing. And indeed, it's very good to hear that we're working on the security guarantees, Article 5 lies security guarantees, so important. But I want to thank you also that you mentioned the thousands of Ukrainian children that have been abducted. And as a mother and grandmother, every single child has to go back to its family. This should be one of our main priorities also in these negotiations, to make sure that the children come back to Ukraine, to their families.
Thank you. And we did. I was just thinking we're here for a different reason, but we just a couple of weeks ago made the largest trade deal in history. So that's a big thing, and congratulations. That's great. Thank you very much, Ursula. Mr. Chancellor from Germany, a very great leader.
Mr. President,
Please.
dear Donald, many thanks for having us today. I think this is extremely helpful that we are meeting and hearing that the two of you are having such a good meeting today here in Washington. The next steps ahead are the more complicated ones now. The path is open. You opened it last Friday. But now the way is open for complicated negotiations. And to be honest, we all would like to see a ceasefire, the latest from the next meeting on. I can't imagine that the next meeting would take place without a ceasefire. So let's work on that, and let's try to put pressure on Russia, because the credibility of these efforts we are undertaking today are depending on at least a ceasefire from the beginning of the serious negotiations from next step on. So I would like to emphasize this aspect and would like to see a ceasefire from the next meeting, which should be a trilateral meeting wherever it takes place.
Well, we're going to let the president go over and talk to the president, and we'll see how that works out, and if we can do that. I will say, and again I say it, in the 6 wars that I've settled, I haven't had a ceasefire. We just got into negotiations, and one of the wars was, as you know, in the Congo was 31 years long. Another one that we settled last week with 2 great countries was 35 years going on, and we had no ceasefire. So if we can do the ceasefire, great. And if we don't do a ceasefire, because many other points were given to us, many points were given to us, great points. Please, Georgia, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Donald, Mr. President, for hosting us today in this important meeting. And I think it is an important day, a new phase, after 3 years and a half that we didn't see any kind of sign from the Russian side that there was a willing for dialogue. So something is changing, something has changed, thanks to you. Thanks also to the stalling in the battlefield, which was achieved with the bravery of Ukrainians and with the unity that we all provided to Ukraine. And the reason why I mention it is that we also have to remind that if we want to reach peace and if we want to guarantee justice, we have to do it united. So that's why it's a very good day, the one we are in. You can obviously count on Italy as it was from the beginning. We are on the side of Ukraine, and we do absolutely support your efforts towards peace. We will talk about many important topics. The first one is security guarantees, how to be sure that it won't happen again, which is the precondition of every kind of peace. I'm happy that we will discuss about that. I'm happy that we will begin from a proposal, which is the, let's say, Article 5 model, which was Italian at the beginning. So we are always ready to bring our proposals for peace, for dialogue. It's something we have to build together to guarantee peace and to defend the security of our nation. So thank you, Mr. President, for hosting us.
Thank you very much. Emmanuel?
Thank you, Mr. President, for organizing this meeting and for your commitment. And everything was said, but I just have to say here, everybody around this table is in favor of peace. And we work very hard, and we've worked very hard during the past few years to have a peace which is a robust and long-standing peace. This is why the idea of a trilateral meeting is very important, because this is the only way to fix it. And by the way, I think as a follow-up, we would need probably a quadrilateral meeting, because when we speak about security guarantees, we speak about the whole security of the European continent. And this is why we are all united here with Ukraine on this matter. In order to organize such a trilateral meeting, your idea to ask for a truce or a ceasefire, at least to stop the killings, as we discussed, is a necessity. And we all support this idea. And in order to have such a long-standing peace for Ukraine and for the whole continent, we do need these security guarantees. And the first one is clearly a credible Ukrainian army for the years and decades to come. And the second one is our own commitment, all of us. And we worked very hard during the past few months among the coalition of the willings, with the support of NATO, to build the different pillars of security guarantees and our commitments. And you can be sure that the Europeans are very lucid about the fact that they have their fair share in these security guarantees for Ukraine, but their own security is clearly at stake in this situation. So you can count on us, as we can count on you, in order to deliver this robust peace for both Ukraine and Europe.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Mr. Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you for hosting us here. Can I start where Emmanuel started, which is we all want peace. The war in Ukraine has had a huge impact, particularly on the Ukrainians who've borne the brunt of it, but it's also had an impact on Europe and on the United Kingdom. There's not a family or community that hasn't been affected. And when we talk about security, we're talking about the security not just of Ukraine, we're talking about the security of Europe and the United Kingdom as well, which is why this is such an important issue. I think this is such an important meeting. As a group, I think we've had a discussion on the phone a number of times, Mr. President, but be able now to be around the table to take it forward. And I really feel that we can, I think, with the right approach this afternoon, make real progress, particularly on the security guarantees, and your indication of security guarantees of some sort of Article 5 style guarantees fits with what we've been doing with the Coalition of the Willing, which we started some months ago, bringing countries together and showing that we were prepared to step up to the plate when it came to security. With you coming alongside, the US alongside what we've already developed, I think we could take a really important step forward today. A historic step, actually, could come out of this meeting in terms of security for Ukraine and security in Europe. I also feel that we can make real progress towards a just and lasting outcome. Obviously, that has to involve Ukraine, and a trilateral meeting seems the sensible next step. So thank you for being prepared to take that forward, because I think if we can ensure that that is the progress out of this meeting, both security guarantees and some sort of progress on trilateral meeting of some sort to bring some of the difficult issues to a head, then I think today will be seen as a very important day in recent years in relation to a conflict which has gone on for 3 and a bit years, and so far nobody's been able to bring it to this point. So I thank you for that.
Well, thank you very much. And, you know, it's very interesting because this is the first for the White House. You can't say that very often. It's seen a lot over the years, since 1800, 1799, to be almost exact. But this is the first where we've had so many prime ministers, presidents, the heads of European nations. And by the way, Alex, I'd like you to say a couple of words, too. You're a young, powerful man. Before I finish up, I want you to say a couple of words. Go ahead.
I'll take the notion of youth back to my wife and try to convince her. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think in the past 2 weeks, we've probably had more progress in ending this war than we have in the past 3.5 years. And I think the fact that we're around this table today is very much symbolic in the sense that it's Team Europe and Team United States helping Ukraine. And the progress that we're looking out of this meeting is about the security guarantees, which are a big part of this, and then of course moving towards a process with a trilateral meeting with you and President Putin and President Zelensky. Some of the international media might wonder, why is the President of Finland here? I think the reason is probably that we might come from a small country, but we have a long border with Russia, over 800 miles. And we, of course, have our own historical experience with Russia from World War II, the Winter War and the War of Continuation. And if I look at the silver lining of where we stand right now, we found a solution in 1944, and I'm sure that we'll be able to find a solution in 2025 to end Russia's war of aggression and find and get a lasting and just peace. The situation is very difficult, but that's why we're here.
Thank you, Alex, very much. Good job. So we're going to be meeting for a while, and we're going to discuss some of the issues. And I don't think there's any issue that's overly complex. It's at a point now where people want to do things. I really do believe. I've known him for a long time. I've always had a great relationship with him. I think that President Putin wants to find an answer too. And we'll see. And in a certain period of time, not very far from now, a week or 2 weeks, we're going to know whether or not we're going to solve this, or is this horrible fighting going to continue? We'll do our best to get it ended. And I believe you have two willing parties, and usually that's good news, but two willing parties that want to make a deal. And we'll journey together, and we'll go over, and we'll see if it can be done. And it's possible it might not be able to be done. On the other hand, it's possible it will, and we're going to save thousands and thousands of lives a week. And so it's something we really have to do. And, or at least we have to give it our best. It's all you can do. You can give it your best. But I think we may have a very good outcome. So I want to thank you all, and the media, I want to thank you. We're going to be staying here for a little while. Then we're going to walk over to the Oval Office, and we're going to have another little discussion about similar matters. And then they're going to go home to their great countries and report. And I'm going to remain here and work, and you're going to go and work. We're all going to be working. We may be in a different location, but that's what we know how to do is work. But I want to thank the media. Has been actually very fair, generally speaking, very fair. I think it's important that they're fair, because this is a very important subject. We have to get it ended. And so that's all we ask for is fairness with the media. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And that appears to generally be the conclusion of the European meeting with the European leaders, Zelensky and the President of the United States of America. And it does appear that there were some interesting comments made. Generally, we were able to hear that first and foremost, it appears that the most important thing that everyone said is that the war does need to come to an end. However, there are still some greater issues that are involved in bringing the war to an actual end, which is the Russian Federation. The Russian Federation has already been making it clear, while we've been on air live covering that situation, that they are not willing to generally accept any sort of situation that we've seen so far that appears to show that the state of Ukraine may get some sort of Western security guarantees or may allow for Western forces to be able to be based inside of Ukraine. They have openly refused that already, showing us that a round of talks with the Russian Federation is highly unlikely, if not impossible. And it also does appear that the Russian Federation is once again doubling it down on the practical realm of unconditional surrender being pressed onto the state of Ukraine instead of any sort of an amicable ceasefire or some sort of a due consideration by both sides being made in the process. But it does appear...
You got to admit that Merz and Macron, the German leader and also the French leader, they actually said what needed to be said. They had the balls to actually say it. They said that a ceasefire is the first logical step instead of just jumping straight into a peace deal. And I think that's just basic common sense. If you can't achieve a ceasefire, then obviously you're not going to be able to achieve a peace. That's pretty much straightforward with that one. So the fact that Putin has allegedly told the U.S. president that he agrees to security guarantees for Ukraine, but also at the same time, though, Putin objects to U.S. troops being in Ukraine. It's like, how can he accept security guarantees, but at the same time say that he's not going to allow troops into Ukraine? It seems to go contradictory to one another.
It seems as though it was doublespeak by the Russian Federation. They are totally fine with Ukraine having security guarantees as long as the security guarantees are now actually enforced and there are no peacekeeping troops inside of Ukraine to ensure or provide the actual security guarantees to the state of Ukraine. I think that that's generally where the confusion is popping up at the moment, because it does appear that the Russian Federation is once again playing their usual tricks and games, because the Russian Foreign Ministry has already been putting out statements in the midst of those talks that we just saw right there, making it wildly clear that they are not accepting any situation where any Western troops, especially American troops, are ever allowed back into Ukraine. But with that in mind, Matthew, what are you thinking about it?
I would say, generally speaking, I'm still shocked at how well this meeting has gone because I was expecting some fireworks between the European leaders, Zelensky, and the U.S. president. Still no fireworks. Generally pretty respectful. It's a huge change from the last time. And of course, the European leaders were not there last time. That's a new addition this time. But I would say, generally, it's gone extremely well. Now, one thing I will note is it looks like the NATO Secretary General really didn't speak up when it comes to like the things that Merz and also Macron stated, but at least somebody said it. So that was a good sign. Also, Zelensky did mention something else during the talks right there. He said he had the best conversation with the U.S. president ever. And also, I believe the Prime Minister of Italy, Meloni, also stated that they have to discuss security guarantees first. And that's a precondition of peace. So overall, I would say it seems like everybody's on the same page. The only person that's not on the same page appears to be Putin and the U.S. president. The U.S. president believes that Putin is serious about the claims that he's making, that he wants to end the war. But I think we all know the truth, that Putin is not serious. Putin is saying what he needs to say in order to buy more time and to basically try to dupe the U.S. officials into believing that he's serious. There's no indication that Putin is serious. He's not agreeable to a ceasefire. He's not agreeable to security guarantees by putting U.S. troops on the ground. He's not agreeable to anything. So I don't know what the U.S. president is thinking in his head. Like, of course, it's his opinion. He's entitled to his opinion. I personally don't agree with it. I think that Putin is clearly not serious based on everything we've heard.
I'd have to agree. I don't believe that the Russian Federation is going to be serious in any sort of negotiation. And right now, we are generally setting ourselves up to see that the Russians are going to shoot this down or find some sort of a creative way to not directly shoot it down, but prolong the process to the point it may as well be shot down. So it does appear that that is the ongoing situation at the moment, based off of what we're seeing and hearing from the European leaders, the President of the United States, and the President of Ukraine currently. And with that in mind, we're actually going to be moving into some more questions in the meantime. And also, folks, depending on whether or not the European leaders are able to make it back out into the public again, that's generally going to be dictating how long we are on air. If this talk goes on for over an hour, we most likely will be off air by that point and just waiting for Zelensky's interview, which apparently will be conducted on Fox News later tonight. But generally, it depends on how long this talk will be and how long it takes for them to get back out in front of the cameras. Because as far as our news coverage is going right now, it's entirely on a live event. And this is something that we rarely ever do, and generally the channel isn't really structured to do this incredibly well. So we don't really have anything to show or speak of in the meantime, and also we're having to really desperately race to try and find any camera coverage of it that is copyright free. So it depends on how long it'll take for the talks to end, because the live cameras from the White House are the only thing that is giving us any form of substance or actual live feed of information coming in of the situation at the moment. But with that, we are on into the questions.
All right, so jumping back into our Super Chat questions right this second, this one is going to go to none other than Just Chillin', who throws in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Just Chillin', for that $20 support and also keeping the channel running. And he throws in the super sticker and says, "You guys are amazing."
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and the kind words, Just Chillin'. It's great to know that folks like you have been around for an incredibly long time and have supported this channel and help it to keep on running. So a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Plazoth, and Plazoth put in an $11 support, and thank you very much, Plazoth, for that support. And he said, thank you for the early stream, and thank you, and LSA.
And thank you so much, Plazoth, for supporting the channel and enjoying our early stream. We're more than happy to do it, and we always love to know that we are able to get consistent news out there all the time, 24/7, all the time. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one is going to go to Sue B, who puts in a 5. And Sue said, thanks for covering this vital summit meeting on the day off.
And thank you so much for enjoying our coverage of the meeting on our day off. We're more than happy to do it. And I got to thank you massively for appreciating it. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, I was looking at one other thing that just came out on Twitter, by the way. One thing that is a bit notable here is I noticed the U.S. president said during his speech there that he was making to the press at the table with the European leaders, he said that we'll know in about 1 or 2 weeks, you know, the old phrase 2 weeks, but not to make fun of that. But he said 2 weeks or so, he'll know whether or not the progress is actually going to be achieved with Russia and also Ukraine as well, or if the fighting is going to continue. Now, if you're noticing an inconsistency there's already an inconsistency because the president claims, or at least states, that Russia agreed to security guarantees. So if that's the case, and, you know, Ukraine's obviously looking for that, that's what they want, then where is the holdup? We're not really being told what the holdup to talks are right now. That's sort of being kept under the rug right now, is what exactly is holding up the talks. I think it's pretty obvious to me that it's the concession of territory that's holding up the talks. But we're not being told what territories Putin exactly wants, and all the leaders are keeping that very, very close to the belt. For some reason. I'm not sure why they're not just saying that in the public, but they're keeping that very secret. But Enforcer, what do you think?
Fairly interesting development, but we'll generally have to wait and see what comes out of it for me to have any comment on it, because generally it's just standing for what it is at the moment. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to, guess who? It is LC39A once again. He throws in another 134 Canadian support. And thank you very much, LC39A. That is the third support of the day. I almost said the night, but of the day. And thank you very much, good sir, once again for that third support. He said, I found this in a sofa, LOL.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, LC39A, the massive support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta thank you incredibly for enjoying this channel and helping to support it. And I gotta say, that is quite a lot that you found sitting on the sofa. That's a huge amount. But still, amazing thanks to you so much once again, because folks like you are helping this channel to keep running every single day. And so, thank you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have one from Rob Horvath that just came in, by the way, at 20 Canadian. And thank you very much, Rob, for that Canadian support. He said, just supporting you guys, and thanks for the stream on the day off.
And thank you so much for enjoying our stream on the day off. And thank you so much for enjoying the channel and supporting it to help us to keep this thing rolling. So a massive thanks to you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat here goes to NK Production, who puts in a 5. And thank you, good sir, again for that support. He said, hello, friends. Supreme Leader Kim here. Oh, I like that, by the way. He said, Lavrov, the horse face, wore a CCCP shirt during the Putin visit, which is Cyrillic for USSR. And what do you think the message to the U.S. was by doing that in LSA?
And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Cam. And I'm just kidding with you, NK Productions, but I do thank you massively for the support and also playing along. That's pretty funny, actually. I got a kick out of that. But as far as Lavrov wearing the USSR shirt, it generally was to show that the Russians have greater ambitions, because the Soviet Union always had greater ambitions, and the Russians also have greater ambitions, and that was a subliminal way of showing that, at least in my opinion. Although really Putin's trying to reinvigorate the Russian Empire more so than the Soviet Union. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for support, NK Productions, and I hope that does answer that question incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a $6 support from Octavian Timorsanu, and Octavian put in a 6, and thank you very much, good sir, as well. He said, LSA, and thanks for the coverage.
Hey, and LSA, and no problem at all, Octavian. We're more than happy to do it, and we got to thank our viewers from Romania, like you, who enjoy this channel and support it, and help us to keep this thing running. So a massive thanks to you once again, and we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Adam Jocko, and Adam puts in a 5 and says, Enforcer Matt, if you could, for those who don't understand, why land exchanging is bad and illegal without national referendum? Well, basically, it comes down to this. From what I'm aware of, in the Ukrainian constitution, it does not permit Zelensky, as the leader of the country, to simply give away land. So that's why he cannot do it. So they'd have to change their laws if they wanted him to be able to simply concede land to Russia. But it's also a bad idea on a geopolitical level, because it's basically rewarding the enemy for invading a foreign country, which is not the message you want to send to dictators around the world. The message that should be sent is that if you invade a foreign country, not only will you not succeed in taking taking the land, but also the damage to your economy and also your country as a whole for invading is going to be so severe. Like, for example, the Russian economy comes crashing down like a ton of bricks. That's the message that should be sent. So I would say just for the sole reason of that alone, we shouldn't be letting any country concede land to an adversary or an aggressor like that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would generally have to say that ceding land to the Russian Federation, or any nation for that matter, is generally a bad idea, as it starts to lay out that that aggressiveness actually is incentivized from a foreign policy perspective, much like the Nazi Germans found that their aggressiveness would allow them to remilitarize the Rhineland, annex Austria, and also annex the Czech Republic as well, without firing a single shot, and then going straight into invading Poland in 1939, which finally was the straw that broke the camel's back. But as far as the Germans were concerned, they might be able to get even further territories without firing a shot, which was the free city of Danzig. Providing territory to the Russian Federation is going to do the very same thing. It is showing them that aggressiveness in foreign policy is actually successful, and it will allow for them to continue to act aggressively and continue to get concessions because the West is wanting to avoid confrontation, while the Russians are doing nothing but trying to pursue a confrontation. So generally that is the reason why it's a bad idea, just at its simple premise, not making it very complicated, is that it's incentivizing aggressiveness on the foreign policy sphere. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Uncle Fester Quests, and he puts in a 5. He said, do you think Russia will threaten NATO directly after this? Oh, they've already started, by the way.
Oh yeah, they've already started. So I would have to say guaranteed, because they're already doing it. So a big thanks to you once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to United Kempo Martial Arts Academy, who puts in a 5, and thank you very much as well for that support. They said, sorry if it's too political. They said here, let's see here. It seems to be that the U.S. leaders change their mind quite easily, but if you can't respond, take a question from the chat.
I thank you for the support. Generally, that is true, because analysis-wise, that's definitely the case. We don't really know what's going on any given week because the president can just change his mind. That's something that you generally don't see in most other administrations, whether you like their decisions or not. They're usually pretty dead set on a certain path of decisions or reactions to certain kinds of outcomes. But the current president can be a bit of a wild card. I think he's becoming more predictable at this point, because now today it actually went opposite than I thought it was going to go. I thought it was going to be another ambush to try and redirect and then try and blame the Ukrainians for the conflict, to take the blame off of himself possibly. But instead, a different approach was taken, which is now starting to show that he's falling under a more predictable sort of a foreign policy approach, which we could actually generally predict with some accuracy if this remains the case. But at least up until now, it was a fairly unpredictable sort of a routine that was made by the president to just pick different decisions depending on the literal day of the week. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and I do thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Alan McMillan, and thank you very much, Alan, as well, for that £10 donation, by the way, all the way from the UK, I would assume. And thank you very much, Alan, as well, for helping to keep the channel running. And we also have a super chat here from none other than Gregory C., who puts in a 5. He said, keep it up on the day off, and nice coverage, men, and LSA.
And thank you so much for enjoying our coverage on the day off, and we're more than happy to do it. And a massive thanks to you once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Nathan Turnage, who puts in a 5. And thank you, Nathan, as well, for supporting the channel, and we do appreciate that. We also have a 3 from Jason Curling. He said, thanks for the Monday stream, and I do appreciate it very much.
And thank you so much for enjoying it. I haven't slept for probably about 36 hours at this point, and it is just because we want to make sure to keep this stream running 24/7. Absolutely no other reason. But beyond that, I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep it running day in and day out, where I can stay up 36 hours straight. So a huge thanks to you once again.
Stay up 36 hours straight.
Oh, I just couldn't sleep last night. But with that, we are on to the next one.
Our next one here goes to Zachary Van Dyke, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Zachary. He says, keep up the good coverage.
And thank you so much, Zachary, for supporting the channel, and we sure will. And so a huge thanks to you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And we have a 2 from It's Court, who said, ridiculous that peace requires a suit, SMH.
And I'd have to say it is a little bit odd in some extents, but still, nonetheless, it's good to see that things are going pretty decently. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Smarzig, and Smarzig put in a 2 and said it's time to sign another piece of paper.
And I'd have to thank you for the support, Smarzig, and I'd have to say, it's always time to sign some paper. We all know it. It's time to get up and get that paper. And so a huge thanks to you once again. I hope that was addressed that well. We're on to the next one.
And this one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a 2. He said, LSA, hit the like button. That's an order.
Hey, and hit the like button. That is an order from none other than LSA Sergeant Figment. I gotta say, the big thanks to you once again for support, LSA Sergeant Figment, and helping this channel to keep on running. And hopefully people will hit the like button. We've almost gotten up to 3,000 likes and about 64,000 views over 2.5 hours. So it was a pretty okay stream. And so a big thanks to you so much once again, but still the likes are absolutely incredible, truly incredibly high, especially for the amount of viewership. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to 4D Modding, and they put in a 2. They said Macron and his third leg. I'm not sure what this means here. I'm scared to read the rest of it off, but thank you very much for that support.
And I thank you for the support of 4D Modding, and it appears that Macron does have a third leg, and a large enough one that it requires a shoe. I've never seen that before myself. But a big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, give me just a second here. I'm being told we got some breaking news. I'm trying to double check and make sure this is the case because I'm hearing a wild claim here. So whoever is reporting that allegedly Belarusian troops are rushing the Ukrainian border, I don't see any evidence or proof of that. So that sounds like that's either made up or maybe it's something I'm just not heard of yet. But I really don't think that's happening because we'd definitely be hearing about that right now. So I really doubt it. But jumping into our next one here, this one goes to N8, and they put in a 2. And they said, thank you, gentlemen, for the fair coverage.
And thank you so much for the support and enjoying our fair coverage. I do know that there was a lot of domestic political topics brought up by the president, but the channel does not affiliate itself with those domestic political comments. Neither does it endorse, support, or condemn any comments on domestic political matters made by political individuals in the United States of America during our news coverage. So I do thank you greatly for enjoying our impartial and neutral news coverage and just simply sticking to the facts of foreign policy analysis and foreign policy developments. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to K98 Killer yet again, who puts in a 2. They said, I see. I was wondering why the turnaround.
The French. And yeah, I suppose there was a little bit of a turnaround there. They had to put some armor on the dash, get the used car looking a little bit new. But a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we got a $2 support from Tech Wizard, who said the White House is live. And yes, we did catch it. The White House was live a short while ago.
And I got to say, thank you for the support. And yes, the White House was live, and we finally found a way to get on it live. And apparently wasn't the website, shockingly enough. You would think it'd be the website, but no, it was apparently the YouTube channel that streamed better than the White House website itself. A little bit odd. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Oh, okay. Also, by the way, it looks like maybe the channel is reporting that Belarusian troops were going over the border. They're actually not reporting that they're going over the border. They're apparently saying that Belarusian troops are near the border. So I think that might be pretty standard, actually. I think Belarus always has troops sort of like hanging out in that area. And also, there's a pod exercise that's coming up as well. So, I mean, they're probably moving them in for that reason. Would be my guess, but we'll have to do some more research on that topic. But jumping into our next one here, this one goes to Uncovered Cube 7, who puts in a 2, and he said LSA. And thank you very much, good sir, as well, for being a longtime channel legend and also supporting the channel very, very much. And in honor of Uncovered Cube Super Chat there, we will be getting our poll question that's currently running. It says, how do you think Putin will react to today's White House meeting? Because we've already heard the Kremlin's reaction overall, but what do you think Putin is going to do specifically? So 57%, the most popular option, is Putin will keep the talks going and keep stalling as long as he can. And 32% said Putin will end the talks and also threaten the U.S. directly. And 7% said I'm 50-50 on this one. And I'll be honest with you, I'm 50-50 on it. I think Putin might be so angry about how today has gone because it went basically a lot better than I thought it was going to go. So he might be angry about that, and also angry about the U.S. statements about potentially putting troops on the ground in Ukraine that he might start threatening directly. But at the same time, though, strategically, it would make more sense for Putin to stall, because stalling allows him to buy himself some more time to build up more forces and troops and to launch larger assaults on Ukraine. So it might be a 50-50, at least in my opinion. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that, in my opinion, I think that Putin will generally try and keep going. He'll try and keep stalling, because what he wants to not see is the implementation of secondary sanctions against Russia, which, to be entirely honest with y'all, I'm not ever sure if that would happen anyways. But he wants to make sure that there's no chance of that happening. So I have a feeling that I'd be with us 56%. He's most likely going to keep attempting to stall, at least from what I can tell. So with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And with that, folks, it actually appears that we are out of Super Chats, at least at the moment. And so it's time for us to finally get on into the live chats. And at this point, folks, actually, we have one last Super Chat left. We'll be getting to that one. But at this point, folks, I think we're going to start rounding out this stream, at least for now. All the other developments that will be coming out will most likely be a good while from now. We don't know how long all of these leaders are going to be inside of this negotiation room. And generally, just to be entirely honest with y'all, filibustering for an hour or 2 hours isn't something that I consider the channel's strong suit to be. We generally want to make sure that when we're on air, we're actually saying something of substance rather than just, sitting around saying nothing like, oh my God, look, the plane's moving, or, something like that. So with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next Super Chat goes to N8 once again. He puts in a 20 this time, and thank you very much, good sir, for that support. He said, also, sorry I missed donation night on Sunday in LFG Free World.
And thank you so much for the support, and it's A-okay. People are busy sometimes, and they can't show up to every stream, but I do thank you massively for supporting our channel and helping it to keep on running, because folks like you do make this thing possible. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to P. Daddy, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much as well for that support. And I guess your name is kind of like what Root called the U.S. president a while ago. He said, thank you. He said, thank you, Daddy. That's what he said to the U.S. president. Thankfully, he didn't say that this time, though. But thank you very much for that support, by the way. He said, I've worked with my brother as well, but not so well. And can NATO send forces if Belarus comes in play?
Well, NATO forces coming in play, that's a good question. And let me see here really quickly at making sure to, let's see, can NATO send forces if Belarus comes in play? Not necessarily. Ukraine does not have any Article 5 protections. If Belarus invaded Poland or Lithuania, then there would be some Article 5 protections, and other nations could come in to get involved and, of course, defend the NATO alliance. But as far as Belarus getting involved in ganging up on Ukraine, there's really nothing that can be done as far as the NATO alliance is concerned, because the alliance is structured to be able to react only in defensive scenarios where the alliance itself is under attack. They cannot preemptively operate in support of nations that have friendly relations with the NATO alliance. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. A big thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next Super Chat goes to Burby, who puts in the 5. And Burby said, thank you. And I got Malik G, my job, more bearable. And I love your reporting.
Hey, that's great to hear that you got it a little bit more bearable, Barbie. And thank you so much for enjoying our reporting. We try our best and hopefully have a little bit of success. So a big thanks to you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Little Ms. 25. And they put in a 5, by the way. They said, I have been watching your shows for ages and keep up the excellent work and reporting from the UK.
And thank you so much for enjoying our work. And we will make sure to keep up the reporting and the news for all you folks over there in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So huge thanks to you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, folks, we're finally back to getting some live chat. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping back into our live chat questions, actually our first ones, this one is going to go to Echo, who said, could the European leader force the USA towards helping Ukraine?
Can you reread that one again?
Could the European leaders force the USA towards helping Ukraine?
Technically, they kind of can. They can leverage their position as a major economic power and the largest trading partner in the world with the United States to do such a thing. So hypothetically, they could, but I don't believe that they're going to be exercising that kind of concerted or consolidated power, at least for now. It appears that they're more so going to be following along with the United States lead, at least for the moment. So I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a live chat question from Cadence, who says, has Russia continued poking at the Baltic states?
From what we understand, Russia has not continued poking at the Baltic states, at least for the past couple of days. There has been some drone incursions lately that were incredibly concerning, including one that flew directly over Vilnius. But we have not really seen any major incursions beyond that, which was about a week or two ago, most likely. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Philip Fix's LSA. He said, "Is your political science education getting its itch scratched by this exchange?" Honestly, I don't know. Like, to me personally, I would say probably not on this one. This is just, it kind of is what it is. I'm going to leave it at that. But yeah, a little bit. But thank you very much, Philip, for the question. And sadly, I really can't answer it honestly, to be perfectly straight with you. But thank you very much. And also, we have a question from It's Court, who said, "Is it possible the Russians launched a cyber attack conveniently at the start of the meeting?"
It could be likely that they did. We can't really say for sure because it may have also been a solar flare that was possibly causing those issues as well. Because apparently there were some other technologies that were having issues at the same time, and that may be showing that it was a solar flare, possibly. Maybe a lighter one. And not the Carrington event, though. The Carrington event's on a whole other level, but it also could have been the cyber attack as well. It's just really hard to ascertain what exactly happened because a great deal of things can cause interference for computer systems, the internet, and so on. So it could have been anything, but there is a chance that it could have been a Russian cyber attack to try and screw over the coverage. But with that, I hope that does address it the best we can. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one is going to go to none other than Daha, who said, "Assume Ukraine had not given up their nukes. Would Putin have invaded, and what difference would it have made?"
Russia would have never invaded if Ukraine didn't give up their nukes, but Ukraine would probably be such a poor and broke country by that point because they would have been sanctioned by everyone for being in violation of the non-proliferation treaties that they really wouldn't have had the ability to maintain or upkeep those nukes. A large amount of them would have disappeared into black markets around the world, possibly in the hands of terrorist forces, and pretty much most of the Ukrainian nuclear arsenal, much like the Russian one in the modern day, would be inoperable and would largely only exist on paper. So while that would have made a slight difference, because even a few nuclear weapons is a very strong deterrent in itself, it wouldn't have been the kind of deterrence that one would have thought, where the Ukrainians could literally obliterate the entirety of Russia. They may have been able to fire off a couple of nukes at some major cities, but that would have been about it. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, at least from what I would know. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And also a big shout out to Firefire, by the way, who put in a £4 donation. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support as well. And and also keeping the channel running. And with that, we're now moving back into our live chat questions. And this one is going to go to Matt Mitchell, who said, "The Zapad exercise of 2025, in my opinion, will be the start of World War III. And what is y'all's real opinion on that?"
I would have to personally say there's a likelihood the Russian Federation is actually preparing for a ground offensive into Europe with this exercise. It is the largest one of its type seen since the exercise was first created. It also is specifically tailor-made to be able to take the Suwalki Gap, because the war game scenario that it works off of it taking the Suwalki Gap. And also on top of that, they are adding in some sort of a nuclear deterrent into the war game by conducting nuclear test firing drills. So I generally would say that it does appear, by all measures to me, to be some sort of a preparation for an invasion, or we generally have to treat them all like that, regardless of where we think they are or not, because who's to say it isn't? Like if someone's looking in your window wearing a shiesty and a crowbar, are they going to break into your house, or are they not? Would you take that risk on not calling the police? They might actually break in. So you generally have to call the police as a deterrent to this guy who's wearing a shiesty holding a crowbar. I mean, maybe he's just going around, it's cold, and he's trying to, work on prying apart some pallets in his backyard or something. You never know. But at the same time, he could also be trying to break into your house. So you generally want to call the police just to make sure to do your due diligence. And for that reason, NATO has to treat the Zapad 2025 military exercise like a potential invasion, whether the Russians actually are planning on it in their heads or not, because everything is there to make it seem like it could be a possible prelude to invasion. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the final question of this segment. Oh, actually of the day. It's not the night, it's not the segment, it's actually the day. And so with that, who's like the last person to put in the lucky last question of the day?
And that viewer is Christian Cruz. And Christian said, "If the American president wants to send troops to Ukraine, are we sure it's going to be on the Ukrainian side?"
Yes, we are definitely sure of that, because it wouldn't really go over well with the Europeans or anyone else if they were on the Russian side. So I can promise you they would be on the Ukrainian side, because doing anything else would make absolutely no sense. It would be insane. As a matter of fact, I think that at that point, if that was what happened, the Congress may actually move forward with grounds for impeachment. Just to be entirely flat out honest on that. That's something that I don't really think a lot of people would accept here in this country if American troops ended up entering Ukraine, but on the Russian side. But beyond that, I do have to say that before we round this thing out, we actually have a 20 euro super chat from Wilness LSA Latvia. And Wilness said, "Hello, Enforcers. Thanks for the great news. We all have to keep working. And also, hoping for peace. Killing must be stopped and save the children. Russia must be stopped." And I definitely agree with you, Wilness LSA. Hopefully, we'll be able to see an end to this war eventually, but not one that will create the breeding ground for the Third World War, but hopefully an actual amenable and strong end to this conflict that will ensure that not only is the peace in Ukraine longer lasting, but the war does not spread or spill over into Eastern Europe at any point in the future. But I definitely agree with you on that, and I got to thank you incredibly for the support, Wilness, and being the hoof trimmer of the LSA from Latvia. And a huge thanks to you once again for enjoying this channel and supporting it. And also a big shout out to Robert Krogan, who threw in a 2 as well with no comment.
Hey, big shout out to you both, Robert and Wilness.
Yeah, big shout out to both of y'all. And so with that, folks, it is time for us to round out this stream for the day. I thank you all so much once again for watching. I hope you all enjoyed hearing of the major developments, news, and information that was coming about the meeting in Washington here on this channel. And we're terribly sorry for the technical glitches, because apparently there's been a decent amount of them from the White House's live stream on one end and then on YouTube from another. Nevertheless, we still persevere and we're able to get the stream out. And I got to thank you all so much once again for watching. And of course, we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, thank you all for another great stream today, and we will see you all tomorrow on our usual time at 10 p.m. Eastern, and also on a short war video tomorrow as well if there is enough news to cover. And thank you all for joining us on this very unusual special stream today. And thankfully, it turned out much better than we were expecting, and it went quite well, actually, considering the circumstances. So Zelensky was done right, and hopefully good things come out of this for Ukraine, and also hopefully Putin gets exposed as well. But thank you all once again, and of course, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and we'll see you later. Good night.